I go up to his door. We got into a violent fight. He slipped in the blood that was both of ours on the floor. And I looked him in the eye, and I said, "It's not so fun with little boys now, is it, Dennis?" And I lit his throat.
This is Clark Fredericks. He's an advocate, an author, and the most badass Boy Scout of all time. He became known as the man who stabbed and killed his childhood abuser. He writes that from 8 to 12, he and several others were sexually and psychologically abused by their Boy Scout leader and sheriff's officer, Dennis Pegg. But this story isn't one of vengeance. It's a story of redemption. Clark will tell us about his childhood trauma. He will also explain how to keep your kids safe from abusers, and if you yourself have childhood trauma, how to deal with it and cope in a healthy way that doesn't lead you down the same destructive path that Clark has followed.
This is your opportunity, dude. So my advice would be open up lines of communication, No matter how upset or disappointed you are with your child over their destructive behavior, there's a reason for it. Find out what that reason is.
This episode is absolutely amazing, and Clark is a true survivor. This is a topic that not many people talk about, and a lot of men like to push down. But Clark has been brave enough to share his story, everything he's learned from his healing to meditation to his spirituality and his relationship with God, and ultimately how he's a better person today and an advocate for children that have suffered abuse at the hands of the powerful within their community. So sit back, relax, and welcome to camp. Clark Fredericks, thanks so much for being here.
Mark Gagnon, nice to be here, bro.
Thank you so much for coming all the way from Westchester.
Yeah, not that I left with plenty of time and made it here in less than an hour, so it wasn't bad.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'm really, really excited to talk for a few reasons, but I also just want to put a disclaimer to anyone that's listening that this episode might be at moments a little heavier than some of the other episodes we've done.
Yeah, there's some heavy stuff, bro.
But I think it's good and I think it's productive, but I just want to throw that out there if there's anyone listening that maybe has had experience with sexual abuse or trauma that, to proceed with caution. But I think that the conversation we're going to have is important for a few reasons. One, I think there are a lot of people that have dealt with sexual abuse that don't know how to cope with it, don't even realize that it happened. They have no idea that the behavior that they're doing in their adult life is a reflection of what happened to them in their childhood. They kind of think that it's compartmentalized. And secondly, I think it's important for parents and people with kids to know what this looks like and how psychopaths and pedophiles can manipulate children and young teens into doing things that they normally wouldn't do. And like I mentioned before, myself being the father now of an 8-month-old, I think about this kind of stuff all the time now, which is terrifying. Just like, one day he's going to want to go on a sleepover, or one day he's going to want to do, like a sleepaway thing with the Boy Scouts, or want to go with the church group, or want to do something that I'm not there. And that brings me a lot of anxiety. And I think through our conversation and through the book that you wrote, Scarred, you lay out a lot of sort of the manipulation tactics that abusers will use to coerce their victims and the survivors of those abuses. So I guess just to start from the very beginning, can you just explain sort of where you grew up and kind of the town and the lay of the land in the spot where you were?
Yeah, I mean, you think rural areas are like isolated from, like the hardcore crime, like it's more in the populated areas.
Yeah.
But like, it's like a haven for pedophiles though, especially back in the time frame I grew up, the 70s. There was so much freedom back then. People nowadays, they just can't believe how kids were allowed all this freedom by their parents. It was, as soon as you could learn how to ride your bike, be gone and be back at dinner time.
Right.
Like 6 years old, like there was no cell phones, there was no computers, so that parents didn't want you around the house. They wanted you out getting dirty and doing whatever.
Tired and come home, go to sleep.
That's it.
Yeah.
And, I grew up in a real rural area of New Jersey, a town called Stillwater. It just lived at a lake community. So like, all the kids, would go down to where there was a dam, that separated the lake and then from the river. The river started at the dam. And just fishing, and there was ball fields, basketball courts, tennis courts, playground, just like everything. So everybody congregated down by the dam area. There was beaches for the lake.
And what was your family dynamic like? Like, what did your parents do? What were your siblings doing?
Yeah, my father, we were a middle class family. Money, I don't recall ever being a real issue. My father was a salesman. My mother worked at the high school in the library. I had an older brother, older sister. On paper, everything looked well adjusted. My father wasn't a regular drinker, but when he drank to get bombed.
Mm-hmm.
He got sober the last when I was like 17. So the last 15 years of his life or so, he was sober.
And would he get angry?
Nah, he wasn't an angry drunk. Just getting bombed, man.
Yeah, just tossed. Yeah, tuned up watching the game.
Yeah, just like dealing with that. Like I said, it wasn't on a daily basis. Maybe a weekend basis. So and it really wasn't until I was a little older that you would recognize it and see it.
Mm-hmm.
And then my brother was my brother was 6 years older than me. He was a big partier. And I didn't know at the time, but he had, our abuser was his scout leader, which then became, my scout leader. And that was his, he used the Boy Scouts, he used that dam area at the lake as like trolling grounds. And this guy, on paper, he was a lieutenant in the sheriff's department. He was a member of the Kiwanis Club. Kiwanis is for the betterment of children in the community. He was an honorary member of Boys Town. Boys Town, I think, is Nebraska, maybe.
Yep.
And they've had all sorts of pedophile problems at Boys Town. He's an honorary member. He was a chaplain in the American Legion. Here you are, a pedophile, a predator, and you're the chaplain, giving the prayer at the start of each, session in the American Legion.
Yeah, of course.
And just, if you Googled Dennis Pegg obituary, like his family in the obituary listed like 25 organizations he was a part of, and the police are all like, those are all his hunting grounds. He's a member of the Audubon Society. I've got so many parents that reached out to me about their kids, in the Audubon Society, who were under his care. And it's just it's a laundry list of hunting grounds for him.
Yeah.
He was a professional hunter of children, man.
Yeah, guys like this are strategic and meticulous. Like, this is not a happenstance thing. This is a lifestyle built around this type of abuse and exploitation.
He's investing years into every kid. I wasn't the only one down at the lake, that he's giving beer to at 9 years old. He's a lieutenant in the sheriff's department. He's giving beer to us.
Right.
9 years old. Think how little a 9-year-old is.
Yeah, it's absurd.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And as we progress into the story, again, I mentioned this before, but if at any point you want to take a break or you don't want to proceed with specific details, like, by all means, you can just flag it. But at what age did you meet Dennis Pegg?
My earliest recollection is 5, 6 years old.
And up until that point, would you describe your childhood as peaceful?
No, I had a really crappy start to life. I was born with a hole in my heart, and I was being monitored for open heart surgery, and I was always getting sick, like pneumonia or bronchitis, and I was always in the hospital. I remember being in those oxygen tents in the hospital. So, and that's traumatic in itself when you're constantly in the hospital. And then I spent a month at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City getting my open heart surgery. And, the doctors came to my parents when I was 6 and said his hole has grown to the size of a $50, and we have 6-month window to operate. And this was like this was 1971 when I was 6. And this was a life or death situation. And I survived it. And I have keloid condition where your scar's raised up. And this animal used this life or death scar, which signified life or death for me, as his way to start touching me.
Right.
I've never seen a scar like that. Can I touch it? So my parents were so proud of me for surviving this surgery. They would have me lift my shirt, and all their friends would have to give me a quarter. Like, Clark, show your scar, and they called it a zipper, because all the stitch marks, it actually looks like a zipper. And, so I'm doing this little peep show for their friends, and one of their friends was this guy. And 3 months after the surgery, I came in the house. It was a summer day. I had the surgery around April of 71. And I came in to get a drink and watch TV for a minute, and he came to the front door. Everybody's out in the backyard. And, he's like, hey, little buddy, come sit with me on the couch here. Where is everybody? I'm like, oh, they're all out back. And he, after talking for a minute, he's like, hey, I got a quarter to see your scar. And I was like, okay. And he gives me the quarter, and I lift my shirt. And he's like, I've never seen a scar so raised up like yours. How about I give you $1 and you let me touch it? And next to my father, this is who I respected the most. He wore his gun. He always had his badge, and lieutenant in the sheriff's department. And so I'm like, sure, not thinking he's got any ill will about what he's going to do. And he's just rubbing up and down and touching my abdomen. Is your stomach sore from the surgery? And I'm like, no. And then this had to be our little secret. And he goes, we can't be friends if you can't keep a secret. This has to be between us. You don't tell your parents I gave you this $1. I'm like, I can keep a secret. And unfortunately, keeping secrets is what did me in with him.
Right.
Pedophiles are stopped dead in their track if you don't keep secrets. Their whole thing is based on secrets.
Right.
Whether it's fear, intimidation, gifts, whatever it is. A lot of family members, you'll rip our family apart if you tell what's going on. Your mother will be out in the street. You kids will be living in a foster home. So
the secret component is
that's a main thing.
Yeah, it's just, especially for a kid, it is so, it's the world is so fragile. And so sort of nebulous that the idea of a secret and someone you trust telling you that if you break this secret, everything else will be ruined.
That's why you got to tell your 8-month-old, when your child gets a little older, if anybody tells you, any adult tells you to keep a secret, you got to let us know immediately.
Yeah.
Because there's no reason for an adult to have a child keeping a secret.
Yeah.
There's no good reason, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. I've even seen this with my little nieces and nephews. My sister will just tell them hey, we don't do secrets. In our house, there's no secrets.
Yeah.
So if someone tells you to keep a secret, just tell them, I can't keep secrets. Sorry. And even if your friends want to tell you a secret, just say, I don't do secrets. Just, there's no need to keep a secret.
That's it.
And it sort of keeps the whole family honest, to be frank with you.
Yeah.
Because they'll even say stuff, just about the family in front of the kids, and they're like, we shouldn't say that because no one keeps secrets,
Yeah.
So it's just it keeps everybody honest, and it also, keeps them away from predators that are using that tactic and that honesty against them.
Everything back in the day was stranger danger. That's
right.
My parents harped on stranger danger because we're going down by the lake, by the dam by ourselves at 6, 7 years old. And don't you dare get into anybody's car. They never said, don't get into Dennis Pegg's car. Don't get into Dennis Pegg's truck, your brother's Boy Scout leader. Don't get into our good friend Dennis Pegg's car.
Yeah.
They never said anything about that. They just said stranger danger.
And this is what we were talking about a little bit before. This idea of stranger danger, I think, was predicated with good intention off of, this sort of cultural panic around child abduction and abuse where, vans would come up and abduct kids. And it was so terrifying and awful. You had cases like Johnny Gosh and Eton Patz and these infamous cases that are just so brutal where these children just vanish. And as a result, the media runs with these stories and they say, be careful of strangers. Sort of, I think, unfortunately neglecting the fact that I think it's like, what you said, 95% of sexual abuse cases are from a known person to the family.
Right.
Whether, a relative, uncle, coach, something like that.
Yep.
So I think that is another thing for parents to be aware of is that, look, of course, have stranger danger, use, sense, but also keep an eye on the people that are within the sort of inner or close circles.
Dude. Like it's always, and it's, the coach that everybody loves or the priest everybody loves or the lieutenant teacher everybody.
The police department.
Who's more safe than a lieutenant in the sheriff's department?
Yeah. And I think predators also are aware of this, which is why they assume positions of high authority. Like they will become priests. And they will become lieutenants, and they will take on these positions within the society that have high moral standing. Because who would ever suspect? And that's my assumption is how cunning and evil these people are. Is that they're trying to find ways to basically wear morality while doing the most deviant act.
They hide in plain sight, and they hide behind their role in the community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and even after I got arrested, we'll get into why. He was a member of the historical society in our little town of Stillwater, and all the old ladies, were quoted in the paper. He would never have done something like that. No, he was the nicest man in the world. Yeah. During your historical society once a month meeting, maybe.
Yeah.
But as soon as he left that meeting, he was back into hunting mode.
Yeah, of course. And then also I think this idea that, evil people are evil all the time, right? Like I think there is a perception that like, oh, the pedophile or the abuser is, this guy with a creepy mustache in your window and he's got a trench coat. And that's not the case. These people, like you mentioned, are upstanding in their society. They're well liked. They have people around them. They have community.
Well, we think evil is going to be a guy with a tail and a pitchfork and horns.
Yeah.
What's evil is a guy masquerading as a lieutenant and a Boy Scout leader and a member of Kiwanis Club for the betterment of children in the community who's children.
Right.
That's pure evil there.
And he uses this tactic with you and slowly finds a gap to kind of lower your guard and then exploit this thing that happened to you in a way to create contact and keep a secret.
Yeah, I mean, pedophiles have to initiate touch at some point.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I see people tussle hair, and it just sends a shiver down my spine. Like to the average person, and hey, Billy, it's harmless.
Mm-hmm.
For a pedophile, it's I'm touching them, and then from the tussle of the hair, it goes to patting the knee, and then patting the thigh, and then it goes from there. You gotta get your potential victim accustomed to touch from you. Like nothing's out of the ordinary.
Mm-hmm.
And then before you know it, you're ensnared in a trap.
So he initiates both. He does touch and a secret simultaneously.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable without the internet back then, how they all came up with devising the same pattern of behavior to get a victim.
Mm-hmm.
Secrets, touch, alcohol, pornography, boom, molestation.
Mm-hmm.
That's like all of them. It was the MO. It's still the MO.
Mm-hmm.
And they have, my girlfriend thinks I've got this sixth sense to spot people who are broken or damaged.
Mm-hmm.
Because we'll go somewhere and I'll bring up my story to the waitress, to the front desk person at a hotel, to the Uber driver, and sure enough, they'll be like, "Me too." And she's like, "It's so
Wow.
bizarre how you can do that." And it's the same thing like with predators. Like I said this in therapy one time. I'm like, "How the heck do these predators?" It's like we have a beacon light above our head saying, "I'm ripe for the pickings." I had this open heart surgery scar that made me different from everybody else. And like when you're a little kid, you just want to fit in with everybody. So here I got this scar and I feel different. I'm insecure about it, and this guy like smells blood in the water, and so I interview people for my podcast, and they are repeatedly abused throughout their childhood into their adult life over and over and over, and they're like, I just don't know how they always found me. And it's just like, we're on that vibrational chart,
Mhm.
and we're at the bottom, and the predators, can feel we're at the bottom, and they pounce on it, man.
Yeah. So what happens from that moment, and how do things sort of progress with Dennis?
From that touching of the scar?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, he devoted years. Like, we're talking, uh, the next 6, 7 years. He's invested in my life, in my brother's life, not knowing. And who knows how many other kids at the same time he has at various levels of the grooming process,
Mhm.
So, he the touching of the scar at 6, um, beers down at the lake in his truck at 9.
So when you're 9 years old.
9 years old. This was we're down there all the time. It's, the summer months, and he's always, coming by, stopping his truck, teaching us how to fish, talking to us kids for hours. It's like no adult should like be randomly spending hours with little children. Like,
Right.
because like why?
Right.
You people, you're just not that nice of a person. There's a reason. So if somebody, the coach that really sees something in your kid, and they're going to take them under the wing and like make them, the star player, or, the piano player who's, doing the private lessons and really thinks your daughter can really, be a top-notch pianist, and yeah, be aware. Like, it's just not normal for adults to be spending so much time with kids.
Is this where the Sunfish incident occurred?
Yeah, it was around that, 8, 9 range. He would catch sunfish, when he's teaching us to fish, and he would smash them against the rocks. Or he'd throw it on the ground and pick up a big rock and smash it on top of it. And he would tell us sunfish are a worthless fish. This is what you do to worthless things. And one day, down at the dam area, there was a wooden bridge, 1-lane wooden bridge that went across the river, and it was, pretty low to the water. And he stops on the bridge and he yells out his window to a group of us, "I got to go up the road for like 15 minutes. I want you guys to catch as many sunfish as you can and save them, and I'll be back." And we're like, "Okay." So like sunfish, like you don't even have to like put a worm on, like they're gullible. Another thing about sunfish, gullible, like you can just put that shiny hook in and they'll bite on it. At least down by the dam area they would. And so we catch a bunch of sunfish. He comes back and he's like, "I want you to lay them all out on the bridge." He goes, "I told you how worthless these are." And he goes, "I'm going to run over them with my truck." So like, we're like his little soldiers, and we put the sunfish out on the bridge, and he goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, squishing their guts out, popping their eyes out. And then he like has us, pick them up with everything hanging out and throw them into the water. And that's what you do to worthless things. So whatever, you could take this whole yeah, I've asked all my therapists, and to get a therapeutic take on it, and he's equating you gullible little boys to sunfish, and when he's telling you that when he's done with you or finds you not useful, this is what could happen to you,
and you need to stay useful,
yeah,
or else something bad will happen,
right? Yeah.
And what did you think as a 9-year-old seeing like these, innocent fish? I mean, yeah, it's a fish, but seeing them get killed, I mean, what was the feeling?
Yeah, it was, we just went through the motions to do what we had to do, but, we're like, oh, gross,
Yeah.
and, we didn't go into more like thought process than that, like other than just gross.
Now, at this point, you have known him for, 3-ish years.
Yeah.
His standing within the community was still solid. He had a good reputation. There's no rumors about his behavior up until this point.
No.
And how do things progress from here?
Progresses to wrestling matches. And he tells me he wrestled. He sets it up with, I used to wrestle your brother, who's 6 years older than me, and my next door neighbor directly across the street, who was my brother's best friend. They're both 6 years older than me. I used to wrestle, and they were both in the Scouts. I used to wrestle with your brother and with Jeff, and let's see how tough you are compared to them.
And how old are you at this point?
I was 10.
And how was he isolating you?
Oh, he would, down at the dam, he'd be like, throw your bike in the back of my truck. Let's go over to the other, the Polska River went from one end of the town down to another end. The fish aren't biting here. Let's go over to the other side, by the gristmill bridge and see how fish are there. And he would always slip into the water and get his sneaker wet or whatever he was wearing, or his, pant leg wet. Oh, we got to go up to my house so I can change. And then get me comfortable being at his house, and give me a beer while we're at the house. And how many times that happened, I can't even tell you. Like going up to his house and him slipping in the water or whatever.
That was really frequent.
Yeah. I mean, half a dozen minimum.
Wow.
Yeah, over years.
Wow.
So, and this was all out of the eyes of my family. Like everything's down at the lake. It's not like he's when he's coming to the house, he's just coming to see everybody and be Mr. Jovial, and it's not like trying to, other than that one time, with my scar when everybody was in the backyard and he had me in the den by myself.
And if you went home to your parents that night and they were like, oh, what'd you do today? Would you ever mention like, oh, I was with Officer Pegg?
Yeah, I saw Dennis and, we were fishing.
And they would say, oh, okay.
Oh, good. Yeah. At 10 years old, you're having a beer. At 9 years old, having a beer with the lieutenant in the sheriff's department. How cool is that? Like,
right.
Why would you want to ruin that? Like, and he'd be like, everything was our secret.
So that was another secret. The beer.
Oh yeah. The beers obviously were a secret.
Had you drank?
And he would always, have candy and gum to give me, and make sure I don't have anything on my breath. Yeah. And so just one of the times going to his house, let's try wrestling. Let's see how tough you are. And so he would allow me to like be the aggressor on top for a little while, I guess, till he got hard and excited. And then and I've heard this from so many other victims of abuse where like the eyes would literally change. You could see his eyes dilate and become dark, and just his presence got dark, and everything about him changed. And so many other victims, like people I'll interview, they'll be like, and then their eyes changed. I'm like, you too? And I've heard that like countless times. and his eyes change, and he becomes the aggressor, and not realizing it then that he has a hard on, but would get me pinned to the ground and then gyrate on top of me. And look, it wasn't until I looked back on it when I was older, like, what he was doing.
Of course.
Yeah. So it progressed to that.
And in these like wrestling matches, I mean, you can call them that, it's abuse, but when you leave them, did you feel like you were abused? Did you feel violated in a way? Or did you think like, oh, that was sort of an awkward, strange thing?
Yeah. Just, because I wasn't putting two and two together with the hard on,
Mhm.
the erect penis and what he was doing.
Right.
Just like, not trying to look any more into it than like, whatever.
So you were still able to operate in daily life without this baggage necessarily on your sort of your primary conscience.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
see.
It was at 11 and 12, like things progress, like,
Mhm.
it's like I said, he's spending years with me just to go from touching the scar to now wrestling matches with a hard on. And over that time, he's showing me pornography.
When does that happen?
He, down at the lake, come in my truck and have a beer. He always had a 6-pack in his truck. And he's got this whole scenario where his friend just bought an old farmhouse and they were clearing it out and there was a desk left behind and he opened up one of the drawers and it was filled with pornography and I grabbed a handful of them and here, let's look at them. And they're like, okay, cool. Like thinking like, oh, I might see some boobs or something, and it's just Polaroids of close-up penises. And he's giggling and laughing, and handing them to me. Aren't these so funny looking? And after X amount of them that he handed over to me, I'm like, where's all the women, Den? He's like, oh, those must have been in the other drawer. I'll grab some of them next time I'm over there. I'm like, all right, and just so it's testing me, it's getting me comfortable, seeing penises, I guess. He's telling me how he was always going out west. And he told me how he met the Marlboro Man, who was the guy portrayed on the back of the magazines back in the day, always smoking,
Mhm.
and the quintessential cool guy. And he tells me how he met the Marlboro Man, and the Marlboro Man confided in him that he's gay. And he's like, it didn't bother me at all. He was the greatest guy in the world. We hung out for days out there. So, like, he's taken, like, the most macho, coolest guy in society and making him gay
Right.
to test you, to get you comfortable with male behavior.
But also conflating terminology here to try to make it seem as though your relationship is gay rather than pedophilic. Right, like he's using manipulative language to make it seem like, oh yeah, what we're just two guys doing stuff,
Right.
which is again another manipulative tactic.
Yeah, like, like, be gay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But being gay and going after little boys is like,
right, which is
like that's a totally different thing.
And he's intentionally manipulating this language to put a label in your mind where you're like, oh, this is not pedophilic. Maybe he's trying to test you and prime you in that way. Which again is just further, manipulation.
Yeah.
And so at this point, he's now done this overt sexual act with you, showing you pornography. The feeling you have when you leave that encounter, I'm sure it's probably a little bit violent.
Just like, oh, that was gross and weird.
Yeah.
But I'm like, all right, whatever. He grabbed the wrong pictures out.
And that is that another secret?
And thinking back on it, he would tell me how my brother and my next door neighbor, Jeff, would get so drunk at his house, he'd have to take their clothes off and put them to bed. And, so then I think back, when I get old enough, thinking back like, oh, were some of those Polaroids that he showed me of Jeff and my brother, naked penis, their penises. And, yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah, so...
And so Do you ever speak to anyone about these encounters specifically? Do you ever talk to your brother about it?
No.
Does your brother ever talk about this guy to you? Does he ever say like, "Oh, I see you're hanging out with Lieutenant Dennis or whatever"? Does he ever have?
He doesn't, again, he's not seeing. Like,
Right.
everything's down, like lake area, throw your bike in my truck,
To the house.
to the house, to the, just fishing, yeah, it was just out of the watchful eye.
And at this point, still no rumors in the town. Everything's fine with this guy.
No, rumors came out about a year after he had me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So-
So it leads up to the wrestling around 10. Then it went into oral sex, him performing oral sex on me while jerking off at 11.
And is that under the same pretense?
He got me to, it was a whole, oh man. It's just, he would set up these skits, scenarios, let's say, where he's like, we're at his house. He gives me a glass of blackberry brandy this time with a beer, has me chug the blackberry brandy, and then says, let's play bumping logs. And he goes, I'll be right back. And, he wore like cargo shorts, and he comes back into the room. He disappeared into his bedroom for a few minutes and comes back. And it looked like he had stuck something in his shorts, not realizing it was his erect penis. And he's stand up, and it's summer. I've got shorts on. If you ever look at the 1970s shorts, like they're the gayest looking thing. It was like pedophiles designed them. Like, I Googled it for some reason a couple of years ago. I'm like, oh man, look how gay they look. Like it's a pedophile's dream, those shorts. And, and he pulls me into him, and he's like, your log's not ready. We're going to get your log ready. And he's giggling, and I'm laughing. I drank a glass of blackberry. And he's like, sit on this chair. And he goes, no matter what happens, keep your eyes closed. And he's like, don't open your eyes. I'm like, okay. And I'm sitting on his chair, and in a second, he slips my shorts down, starts blowing me, and he's got his cock out, masturbating. And I open my eyes, like it just like, what the fuck's going on here? And he did what he did. And just whatever scenario at the end, he came up with, our secret, the thing was, and not to minimize, but I'm not seeing him on a daily basis. I'm not getting abused on a daily basis. So like it could get spread out for weeks or months, before running into him again. So I can't, I'm sure I saw him, multiple times after that, but the next event that sticks out in my mind is when he met me at 12. And that was the summer. Back then they opened up a new high school, and they took the elementary 7th and 8th grade out of the elementary school and put it into the high school.
Mm-hmm.
So I graduated 6th grade. And in that summer before going off to the high school to start 7th grade is when he raped me. And he had this whole elaborate plan he wanted my help with. And we ended up at his house, and again, blackberry. And it was, it was a summer day, and it seemed like, I don't know, I just had this suspicion he put his heat on because his house was sweltering. And it led to us being on his bed and sweating and taking our clothes off. And then before you know it, he's got me in a bear hug with me. And I'm crying and screaming. And this piece of garbage whispers in my ear. He's got me like where I can't move, and whispers in my ear, just another minute, so that he can finish his deed. And he had a coon dog. Coon dogs have a long, drawn-out howl, and his dog was howling. He had a back room, and the dog was just going nuts because of my screams and cries. And we got done, cleaned me up like a great guy, and sat me down on his kitchen table, got me another beer, like we're just two lovers who just had a nice romantic tryst or something and having a beer afterwards. And he brought his dog in, who's still howling, and brought it right in front of me and said, "I want to show you what will happen to you if you open up your mouth about what just occurred." And he began beating his dog and beating his dog and beating his dog. And I'm screaming and I'm crying and I'm begging him, "Please stop, Dennis. Please, 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 please stop." And he beat the dog, and the dog lay at a heap at my feet. And he goes, "You will not talk about what just happened, or that will happen to you." And so what am I supposed to do after that? Like go running home to my parents and open up my mouth about what just happened? So he dropped me off down at the dam area with my bike, and I took my bike and I ran down the river, and I ditched my bike in the weeds, and I just stood by the river, and I was like rocking and hugging myself and crying a little. And my mind said, "We are never going to talk about this. Talking about it is reliving it, and we are definitely not going to relive it." And that really was the worst thing. Our minds try to protect us, and a lot of times they do the complete opposite of what we need. Like I needed to talk about it instantly. And instead, I clammed up. And I had gotten that Christmas, after that summer, I got a dirt bike. And I began riding dirt bikes at our lake community. There was a track behind our house. And I avoided the dam area. Like I just started riding dirt bikes with older kids at the lake and not going back to the dam area anymore. That dirt bike became, like my savior, to get me away.
What's up, guys? We're going to take a break really quick because your food sucks. That's right. We live in a country where, unfortunately, a lot of the food we eat, even if you try to eat clean, has got pesticides and seed oils and who knows what else is in your Caesar wrap. And that is why it is important to supplement your food. This is what I do on a daily basis, and I do it with Symbiotica. Yes, I love Symbiotica because it is the easiest way for me to supplement my food and get all the nutrients that I need, that I should be getting from my food, but unfortunately, I don't because, the world and capitalism or whatever. But with Symbiotica, I'm able to get my magnesium, which I take every single night. That helps me to sleep. I take my colostrum, which is great for my gut health. It helps my skin and it gives me an immune boost. And the thing that I'm most excited about is mineral shilajit. Shilajit is an ancient mineral resin that literally comes from the Himalayas. It sounds crazy, but it's not. It's right here in this little jar, just a little dab into some warm water. And since I've been taking it, it's full of fulvic acid, trace minerals, all the stuff you should be getting from your food, but you're not. And since I've been taking it, I feel sharper. My energy is more consistent and stable. I'm not reaching for the third coffee. Instead, the Shilajit keeps me locked in. Another thing I love about Symbiotica is that instead of taking a handful of pills and people look at you like a crazy person, they actually get curious. They see you taking this awesome little liquid gel pack that tastes amazing, and they go, "Oh, what is that? What are you taking right there?" And I tell them I'm taking my Symbiotica for my health because I'm trying to live till I'm 180 years old. So if you're interested in reclaiming your health for the summer, feeling better, having more stable energy, and doing it in the tastiest way possible, go to Symbiotica.com/camp, use the promo code CAMP, and you will get 20% off your order and free shipping if you go to Symbiotica.com/camp or click on, the description. You'll see the links right there, or even in the bottom of this banner. Now let's get back to the show. What's up, guys? We're going to take a break really quick because you own a small business, or maybe you work for a small business, and I am about to make your life so much easier. Let's say, hypothetically, you own a little, furniture business, right? And you're struggling to keep track of the raw materials, the production schedule, invoicing clients, all that stuff. Well, that's why I want to tell you about Odoo, okay? Because with Odoo, it's an all-in-one business platform that streamlines everything. Now you have inventory management, you have manufacturing, you have accounting apps that will make everything so simple. So now if you have a small business, you can monitor the inventory in real time, schedule production calls more effectively, and you can send invoices automatically, all from one platform. Plus, you get a customized CRM to track sales leads and follow up with potential clients, boosting your closing rates. Back in the day, you'd probably have to get, some Ivy League operator, business person that's able to make everything happen for you. But now with Odoo, it cuts it all out. And I'm sure you're thinking, okay, if this is going to make my life easier, give me more free time to spend with my friends, family, and playing softball, and make me more money, it must be crazy expensive. This is the good news. Listeners of this program are going to get a 14-day free trial. That's right. You get 2 weeks with Odoo completely for free when you go to odoo.com/camp. That's right. Odoo.com. Use the promo code CAMP and you will get 14 days for free just to try it out. See if you like it. If it's not for you, you don't need it. All right. But Odoo is going to make your life so much easier. Everything you need all in one place. Save time, make more money. Now let's get back to the show. How different is life before and after the incident? Is it?
Yeah, everything changed after, even somehow at 11 with the blowjob, I was able to just disconnect from that. But the rape changed everything. It changed. I had been an altar boy in the Episcopal Church. Boom, I'm done with God. Like back then, the old crusty ministers, you do good and good things will happen to you. You step out of line and you incur God's wrath, during his sermons. And like, what the F could I have done to incur God's wrath for this to have happened to me?
Fuck that. I did everything right, and this is how I get repaid.
Yeah, and I didn't learn till a lot later on that we have free will, and free will you can use for good or for evil. It's not like God was allowing this to happen. God can't be. We want God to be the superhero, who's going to save the train from going off the tracks or the boat from capsizing, or the Boy Scout from getting, If God is doing all those things, the plane from crashing, and what's the sense of life? Like we're just puppets then.
Right, our free will is violated.
And God is in the sky, controlling everything. So, but at the time, that's what it felt like.
Yeah, of course.
It didn't seem like free will. Nobody had ever taught me about free will. It just seemed like God had let me down and done with it. And
then as far as school goes, relationships with friends.
Yeah, school, I realized I was a smart kid and could do absolutely zero and get passing grades, and that's what I did. I let my guard down one time, whether it was 7th or 8th grade. In an English class, we had to write the teacher gave every student a letter in the alphabet, and you had to write a 1-page short story using that letter of you got assigned to start words, as many words as you possibly can. I got assigned the letter S, and I still have that essay. And I wrote about being a slave on a ship, where the shipmaster is a gay guy who's trying to come into my bunk at night to molest me, and I'm beating him with a metal pipe at night. And I got this whole 1-page scenario of this going on. And the teacher gives me an A and writes, "Good job, use more paragraphs next time." It's perfectly fine for 12, 13-year-old to be writing about a gay guy trying to get into his bed at night and beating him with a pipe.
I mean, absurd. No one ever talked to you about it.
No. And then after that, I was a clam. That was it.
Was that were you trying to get?
I can't recall how I had forgotten about that essay. And when I got arrested, my mother found it. She went through my childhood stuff, and she's like, "Oh my God, how did I never see this? How did nobody bring this to my attention?" She gave it to my lawyer, and then my lawyer made a copy for me to read, and I was like, I vaguely remember writing that, just broken and my pain and trauma pouring out of me,
And then as far as your relationships with friends.
I was, and this is what a lot of us do, I just put on a false a false face. We have two faces, the one we show the world, the one behind closed doors. The one I showed the world was just like positive, happy-go-lucky Clark, Mr. Friendly, sociable. My mother worked in the school. She was in the library. Maybe this teacher thought, like Joan would obviously know if something was going on. This is just Clark with a wild imagination, So the teachers, liked me. I was real popular with friends and, my classmates. And
did you have other coping mechanisms immediately after the event? So you mentioned the dirt bike, but were there other, was music or anything else an escape?
Just weed, and then it morphed into drinking in high school. Alcohol became easy to get. Back then they had paper licenses. When I was a freshman, my brother and the drinking age was 18. My brother, tossed me his expired paper license with his date of birth, and like nobody even like looked at that it was expired, and just I was able to get served wherever.
And were you angry?
Yeah, but my anger isn't showing in those years. Like the rage is building. Like the anger is building. It's it's like a snowball just starting off down the hill. This pain doesn't diminish as the years go on. It grows, and my rage grew as years went on, and you think you can just bury it, but it's gonna come out in destructive ways. And my life just should have been filled with so much promise, and I just like squandered everything and just sabotaged everything, every romantic relationship. So the high school years were, a drunken blur. Sports, I played basketball 2 years, quit the other year, got injured the other year, just gave up on sports.
And what was that a general apathy towards life?
Yeah, just like not being able to apply myself, just not having that internal fortitude to want to study, to want to excel at sports. Just
looking back, would you say you were depressed?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, just it was exhausting just living that dual life of having, like can't let mom see me at school, like being goth, wearing goth clothes, and having a frown on my face, and looking all down and out. Got to be, Mr. Cheerful, don't want my teachers to know, that something's amiss with me. Got to keep that smile cranked on, same for my classmates, and it's exhausting when you feel the complete opposite inside, and you gotta live that lie.
Yeah. And you can't help but wonder if even like the psychological effects of even like the Sunfish moment of like, this is what happens if you're worthless. And even just that tape playing in your head to other adults, like, I'm not going to be worthless. I'm going to be a good kid that does good things. And, I'm going to be friendly and be accepted by the group. And that will protect me. And that will make sure nothing like this happens again. And the constant battle to put that on every single day.
Yeah.
It must be draining you.
It was draining, man. It was exhausting. Like my whole life is, I tell everybody I lived the most exhausting life. Just, you become hyper vigilant, like later on in life, like my life became pedal to the metal. Like there was no mindfulness and meditation and sitting calmly and deep breathing and yoga, fuck no, bro. It was like, we got to outrun this pain, and we're going to go full steam ahead, and we're going to ride this wave until it crashes, and, let's see what happens.
And drugs and alcohol are a great escape for that.
Yeah.
Because you get this thing.
The problem with drugs and alcohol is they work.
Yeah.
They work until they don't,
yeah, of course.
But
So you get access to weed and you're smoking regularly.
Yeah. My father found it in my room. He threatened to send me to military school, you know. And you and I talked, before we started this. My father, rumors did come out finally about this guy. He worked at the jail as a lieutenant in the sheriff's department, and rumors came out about him taking newly released young male inmates home to mentor them, and then molesting them at his house. And how this got out is these young guys would run out of his house in the middle of the night and be hitchhiking through Little Stillwater. I mean, Stillwater is exactly what it sounds like. It's, a one-horse town. And people would pick them up. Hitchhiking was normal, in the 70s, 80s, 90s. Now it's like not a big thing. And when people would pick them up, they would say like, this guy, Dennis, just, he offered me to get back on my feet and to help me. And, I woke up in the middle of the night. He's on top of me, trying to molest me. And that spread like wildfire through Stillwater. And my father caught wind of this, and he sat me down one day and he said, son, I want to ask you a question. He said, I'm hearing some disturbing rumors about Dennis taking inmates home from the jail and trying to molest them or molesting them. Has he ever touched you? And I just couldn't bring myself to like say it. And I'm like, no, Dad, he's never touched me. He's like, all right. And like a year or so later, like when I was around 15, a classmate of mine who had been in the Scouts with me from Stillwater, his mother worked as a waitress at the local Dunkin' Donuts, and my father was in there having a coffee one day, and she's telling my father how her son, Michael, was repeatedly by Dennis. And my father came home from that and, sat me down again. And this time he said, son, I want to ask you something. And I just want you to know before you answer, you'll never have to go to the police. You'll never have to testify in court. I will handle this myself. And he told me the story about, what the mother said about Michael. And he goes, just tell me if Dennis has ever touched you. And, I'll take care of Dennis myself. So, in my mind, my father's saying, I'll go kill Dennis. That's how I took it. And that's a lot of pressure, like over the next few weeks, like I said no again to him. And then it just like was eating at me, whether to tell him. And I'm like, man, what if, Dennis kills my dad? My dad goes to get him and my dad ends up getting killed, and that's on me. Or my dad has to go to prison. That's on me. And I just kept quiet about it.
What is that emotion when you're saying no, but your mind is saying yes?
Yeah, like my mind's screaming, like, let's tell him. Let's be done with this shit. And then the words just come out, no, Dad.
And is the feeling fear of retribution from Dennis?
Yeah, that fear's been instilled in you.
Mm-hmm. It's
also like, do you want to be known as the damaged boy now? Like in college, I met the love of my life, and like she would see me get lost in my thoughts, and ask me like, where'd you just go in your mind? And I'd make it out like she was nuts, because I want to be, the cool party animal, hot, sexy boyfriend,
mm-hmm.
not the broken, wounded, damaged boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
The two didn't mesh in my mind.
So if you could just get rid of the damaged one and, we can move on.
Yeah, just like, there's no need to tell her about what happened, there's no need to tell my dad, I don't want to open up this Pandora's box. And it's the worst, like my mind told me down at the river at 12, after that, like, we are not going to talk about this.
Yeah, this is done.
Yeah. And like, I let my guard down with that essay I wrote, and, and that was it,
Now, it seems like your dad, unfortunately, was doing the right thing. Like, I don't think his actions were negligent necessarily. They just might have been sort of misguided in the way that he put pressure on you in that moment. So I'm curious, like, if you had advice for parents that maybe are dealing with a kid that had experienced a predator like this, what should they say instead?
Yeah, like I've said how my dad blew it when he found the weed. Like he found a pipe, papers, and a bag of weed in my room at 12 and threatened to send me to military school. Like I already investigated a school down by Philadelphia, and this shit ends right now, or else your ass is going to be sent off to military school. Like, instead, like, this is your opportunity, dude. Like, to sit me down and have a heart to heart, like, son, why at 12 years old are you smoking this crap? Like, what's going on in your world? You know, that you feel you need to do this, like, talk to me. Instead, it was the hardline approach.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I went through this shit with your brother, and I'm not going through it with you. You're not putting me through the same stuff your brother has put us through. He goes, so this ends right now, or else you're off to military school. So my advice would be open up lines of communication. No matter how upset or disappointed you are with your child over their destructive behavior, there's a reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
Find out what that reason is. My dad didn't do that. So in that aspect, he blew it.
Do you think asking a kid straight up, like, hey, has this person touched you? Is that adequate questioning in the work that you've done with other abuse survivors? Or should it be phrased in a different way?
Yeah, I mean, that's, everybody asks me, how do you get a kid to open up? And it's just, it's just trust and lines of communication and gentleness, because if you suspect that something's happened, they've experienced horror. And like, you just can't say, tell me what happened.
Right.
It's just like,
you can barely get an adult, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, much less a kid.
So yeah, it's just, it takes patience, might just have to say, like, I am always here for you. When you're ready, if something has happened, you can come to me anytime. There's not going to be any judgment. There's not going to be any freaking out. I love you. I want to help you. Let's talk. Instead of the hardline approach, you got to tell me what happened, and I'm going to go kill the guy.
Yeah, of course.
It's just not going to.
Yeah.
It was, like I said, it was just that was too much on me. Like after what I've already been.
I wonder if art could be a helpful sort of conduit for conversation for kids in this regard, like taking them through like an essay, like the way you did, or drawing or painting.
Well, that's what they do nowadays. Like a kid back in the 70s or 80s would get taken into a police barracks, the state police barracks or the local town cop, into usually a windowless room, concrete, and a desk and a detective, probably with a cigarette dangling out of his mouth. So, what happened to you, kid? Yeah. Nowadays they take you to, like in our town is Ginny's house. It's for abused children, and it's a therapeutic setup, and it's, light tone colors and toys and games, and they get the kids comfortable in there, and it's a calming place to get them to open up about what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that's the approach you got to take.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I can see why these channels for kids are so important, to have space for them to open up honestly, and not without the coercion or the pressure. You take a kid down to a police station, the fear of, oh, am I going to do something wrong? Am I going to put my parents in jail?
Am I going to get arrested for?
Yeah,
yeah, right. I mean, that's.
And something I always think about.
You get pulled over by a cop for speeding, your heart starts racing out of your heart, or out of your chest.
I put my keys on the hood still, or like I'll put them on the roof. I remember talking to people being like, why do you do that? Like I was in like a very like white suburb of Florida, and I was like, oof, I don't want to mess around. So like I couldn't imagine being a kid and having this happen.
Yeah.
And something I think about with like childhood trauma in general, like outside of even just sexual trauma, but just all trauma, is like I'm curious if this sort of resonated for you, but I've heard that when children are traumatized, specifically by people that they trust, they don't have the emotional apparatus to look at their abuser or their traumatizer and say like, oh, that's a bad person. Instead, they hold the esteem of that person that did it and they say, I must be a bad person. I must be someone that's worth treating poorly. And as a result, they create this real negative sense of self. And they, if their parents are abusive, they say, my parents are good, I'm bad, which is why I'm being treated this way. Instead of having the emotional maturity to say, no, they are broken in this moment or they're doing something wrong to an innocent kid.
Right.
And that they hold on and sort of internalize all the pain that has happened to them.
Yeah.
And I imagine it's probably similar in your case, that this thing happens from someone you trust and the rest of your teen years, you just go, I'm bad. I am, I'm worthless. And this thing that happened to me is, my fault, and just suppressing all of those emotions.
The self-hatred and the self-loathing is just building an enormous,
Mm-hmm.
You ask about hate and rage, you're hating yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and then the rage starts, to build over the years.
Mm-hmm. So then you eventually go to college.
I go to college, yeah.
And college is fine. You have a decent time.
Yeah. I went to Northeastern University up in Boston, and I did great in school. I had school down to a science where I could study for 3-4 days, and I could be a blackout drunk for 3-4 days.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried cocaine. This was in the 80s. Tried cocaine in college. Absolutely loved it. Just instantly took away all that self-loathing and feeling weak and insecure, and just made me feel outgoing and confident and strong and powerful. Met the love of my life back then. Northeastern's a 5-year school. We dated, off and on for the 5 years and then afterwards. And she wanted to, start our lives and get married and start a family. And, I could have sex all I wanted. I could say I love you,
Mm-hmm.
but intimacy, getting married and being intimate and living together and being intimate, I just couldn't do it. And I told her I couldn't do it. And she's just like, why? We've been together for so long. What are we doing here? And I just told her I just can't get married. And she's like, I got to go in a different direction then. And I was like, all right. And, that's the trickle down effect of what this animal did to me, Had I gotten together with her though, it would have just been a train wreck. I would have made her life hell. So she haunted me for 30 years.
So in that moment when you're saying no, you don't have a cognizant feeling of like, oh, because of my trauma and the baggage that I'm dealing with, I'm unable to have intimacy. The feeling in your brain is just on fire. Like, hey, connection is dangerous. I can't let this person get close.
Yeah, it was just, it wasn't like I've been abused. I can't have it. That's not going on. What's going on is, oh my God, I'm suffocating. I'm starting to have a panic attack. I can't breathe. I'm drowning. The answer is no. I
Get away.
No, I gotta get out of here. So that was the experience.
And the culture of therapy at this time.
Yeah, there was nothing back then. There was no organizations back then. Like I just mentioned Ginny's house in my town. There was nothing back then. Back then you went to a state police barracks or a local cop shop. There was no organizations. The cops were the only one. This guy was a law enforcement officer. He was a lieutenant. So that avenue was cut off. So there, I tell people nowadays, I'm like, we are so lucky nowadays, like with the internet. Like you can go on and connect with somebody around the world, have an AA meeting around the world, or connect with abuse victims around the world. Back when our parents and our grandparents and their parents, like whatever trauma they had, like they just had to suck it up and grab a bottle of vodka and get through it.
Yeah.
There was the therapy was just for the elites in New York City, back then. Therapy wasn't for the average Joe.
So basically from graduation, for the next 20 years of your life is marred with drugs, alcohol, and a search for a thrill, you could say.
You look for the quick fix.
Yeah.
And that was like, as soon as you feel uncomfortable, you got to fix it. Like there is no delaying gratification, for the greater good down the road. It's like, I need gratification right now, immediately. And that's what I became, just, looking like a junkie, looking for gratification, instant gratification anytime, I felt uncomfortable.
And what would sitting with that discomfort bring up? Like, what would that feel like?
Just like, that's what I say, like you become hyper vigilant. You just become on the run, on the go. Like there was no sitting, feeling uncomfortable.
Is that suffocating feeling you mentioned before?
Yeah. Just, yeah, you're running from that pain. Like you're constantly trying to stay one step ahead of it, whether it's from drugs and alcohol, whether it's from sex, like my 20s were just a blur of sex, like just one night stands. Like I'll prove that I'm a man. I'll get rid of this insecurity. Just if I sleep with enough women, this insecurity, this self-loathing will go away, So like I was just a revolving door in my 20s, and it left me like that's adding more trauma because I'm hurting all sorts of women along the way just to gratify myself, and they're catching feelings for me, and I'm just like, pew, pew, pew. And that was my whole 20s into my 30s, just doing that. Like drugs weren't a big thing in my 20s. If we went out, and I'm just saying sporadically, once in a blue moon, and somebody's like, well, let's get some Coke and get a bag of Coke for a night going out. That would be a rarity. I went years without doing cocaine in my 20s. Just sex, though. Sex and drinking. Those were my drugs then.
And you were holding a job in that point as well.
Yeah. I mean, I was going through jobs. Like I got out of college. My father put up money for me to become a partner in a tire retreading shop. My brother was in the tire business. My father was a salesman for Goodyear. He thought, oh, let's have all three sons in the tire industry. And so he put up money, so here I got this great education and went and became a partner in a tire shop with a retired trooper, a friend of my dad's. And it just imploded, like within 3 years it was done. Like my father's relationship with this best friend fell apart. I was stuck in the middle, and I just like I was like a pawn between the two of them. And I was just like, F this. And I left. And I got a job on Wall Street. I was working on Wall Street, living out in Jersey still, commuting in. I did that for a couple of years. Walked away from that. I worked for a buddy in my grandfather had died. My grandmother had gotten murdered, which is a whole thing we can go into. And each grandchild inherited some money. And I took my money to buy a fixer-upper house. And my buddy was in construction, so I started working with him in construction to learn how to redo the house. And, he and I worked on it. And when we fixed it up, then I went to work for him for a couple of years doing construction. And then blew that off after a while.
And what is that? What is the nature of getting a job, doing it for a few years, excelling, and then letting it go?
Feeling trapped. And trapped is how I felt at his house.
It's the suffocation again.
I was an animal in a snare when I would go to his house. And I would feel trapped in relationships. Like I was the greatest boyfriend for 3 months. Like you would have a blast for those 3 months, but then you'd be like, it's just overwhelming after a while. Like it's, a nonstop party and sex fest.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it would start off great.
And then she says, where are we going?
And then it would be like, can we do something normal? And, can we start like, and be like,
move in?
See ya,
Yeah. And the jobs probably had a similar effect.
And the same thing too. Like, I don't want to be trapped in a job. I'm never going to feel trapped again. So it was always just cutting and running.
You're going to be a partner in this thing, and you'll work in Wall Street, and you'll be tied to this, and then you'll get your retirement and your pension for 20 years later. And you're like, no.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I'm not thinking about being tied to anything.
You'll take the money you inherited and start flipping houses left and right. Yeah, no.
Right. Because anything that was some type of long-term intimacy, even if it was professional intimacy, was still too much to handle.
Yeah. So like, and my life has been a nonstop trauma. Like, it's not just the trauma from that. Like I mentioned my brother and my next door neighbor. At 17, when I'm 17, my next door neighbor puts a shotgun in his mouth and blows his head off next door, having been in the Scouts with this guy. In my early 20s, my grandfather died when I was a senior in high school. They had a house right on the water down in Naples, Florida. Beautiful place. My grandmother, my father and his sister, my aunt, tried to get her to move into like a retirement community. She's like, are you nuts? She's like, this is paradise. Why would I move out of here? Some guy breaks into their house. She's 80 years old, ties her up, tortures her, or kills her. He was in a gay love affair with her next door neighbor, and the guy broke up with him, and he went to go kill him, and he wasn't home. And for whatever bizarre, insane reason, he's like, I'll go next door and I'll kill the old lady next door. And the cops, I remember my father saying, like, the cops don't want to tell all that she went through in the last minutes of her life. They just said, let's just say he tortured her. She was bound, tortured, and killed is how they summed it up. You guys don't need to know any more than that.
And this guy served trial and went to prison.
Yeah, he stole her car. He had walked to the guy's house to kill him, and then, like an idiot, stole her car, and that's how they caught him. And he got sentenced to life in Florida prison.
What the fuck?
Yeah, so like that was a whole triggering event for me, as well as bringing up so my my next door neighbor. So I'm 17. I got my own trauma I'm dealing with, and then he blows his head off, and I'm thinking, is that going to be my destiny? Is that what's going to wait for me down the road? Am I going to get to that point? Did
that seem out of the question at that point?
Out of the question?
Yeah.
No,
like,
did it seem like this is my fate?
That this pain will build up over time, and that will be the only way out.
This is where I'll get to in life.
Did that scare you?
I would say haunted me. It haunted me throughout my life. It would be the word.
And then these later traumatic events, again, they're traumatic in their own right, but they're also bringing up these triggers for you and bringing up these other feelings. Did they like
hearing my grandmother's been murdered, and my friend murders himself, and Jeff, my next door neighbor, is like a brother to me. With the three of us, like they were the older big brothers, but he was literally like a brother, and so that was devastating to me. Jeff's death really haunted me.
And at any point in the wake of that, did you consider, is this something that is worth talking about? That this might be something that happened to him? Did it tickle in the back of your head?
It was always, like, let's suck it up there, big boy, and put our shoes on and go about our business,
How did Jeff's death affect your brother?
I won't really know. But my brother, was a hard charging guy his whole life, but he was able to start a business, become very successful with his tire automotive center, get married, have a family. And one of my therapists asked me, like, Clark, in your 20s and 30s, did you focus on the abuse, or was it, like, in the peripheral vision of your mind? And I thought, and I'm like, like, I would have these triggering events that would, like, send me into a slide and into a depression, and but I'm not necessarily equating my grandmother's rape and murder to Dennis Pegg. I'm not. I did equate Jeff's suicide to Dennis, and that, you asked about the rage. That's when the rage started. Like, I just became seething that I equated Dennis killed Jeff, and that is where my, up till that point, it was all just self-hatred. Jeff's death started the rage towards Dennis. That's when it flipped for me.
Now, at this point in your 20s into your 30s, you'd never seen Dennis again.
Yeah, like, occasionally, like, I remember, like, maybe home from college and going out to a bar with my friends, and he happened to be in the bar, and I drove, and we had just gotten our beer, and I turn and I see Dennis there, and he's like, and I'm like,
he waves to you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like, they have no shame. These predators, like, no shame at all. And I chug my beer, and I'm like to my friends, we got to go. Let's get out of here. They're like, we just got here. I'm like, there's no women here. We're going to go hit another bar where there's women. I'm driving. You can either stay or we're going. Like, very forceful. Like, let's rock and roll. Like, I'm not staying here. They're like, all right, whatever, bro. And, they chugged their beer, and they're like, busting me like, what the fuck, dude? What the hell? And, like, got to get out of there. I dated a girl in my late 30s and 40s, and I don't even recall this, but we were headed to our friend's house for a party, and she said we were at a stop sign, and Dennis Pegg came and made the left to come up alongside up the road, by us, and, like, I just went nuts and started spitting and punching the steering wheel and cursing, and she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, Dennis. And she's like, Dennis who? And I'm like, Pegg. And she's like, what about him? I'm like, he's a scumbag, and he just went by. And she's like, all right, calm down. And she, says I proceeded to get bombed that night, and, she had to drive me home and stuff, but I don't recall that. Yeah.
I mean, it's strange how even just the sight of someone can trigger those feelings internally, like your blood running cold, your heart starts to beat, like, that sensation just from the proximity to the person that caused this. And I'm sure that's probably what you felt. It was that feeling of, like, just a full body rush, anger, all those feelings flooding back in one moment.
Yeah. I mean, it's like ripping the Band-Aid off, and, that wound is there, like, I'm keeping a Band-Aid on everything. But I've never addressed that wound.
Right.
So that wound's there.
And it's building.
And it's just waiting.
One of the things that you mentioned in another interview, that in your late teens, you got into, like, pyro and, like, lighting fires.
Yeah, I was when I was younger. Yeah, it's like, I lit everything, like, everything on fire. I lit our house on fire. I lit the leaves on fire where like, the whole backyard was on fire.
Now, I've heard this to be the case amongst people with different types of trauma, that fire becomes sort of I don't know, like some type of hobby or some type of thing to sort of, like, work through anger or resentment. I don't know if through your therapy.
Well, I didn't know anything about. I never put two and two together until. I mean, this is going to get us a little ahead, but again, when I was in prison, I got therapy for the first time, and I was in a group therapy class, and our therapist said, "How many of you have ever played with fire when you were younger?" Every hand went up.
What is that?
And she's like, how many of you have ever shoplifted? Every hand went up. And she's like, those are signs of childhood abuse.
And do you know why, or have you read any explanations as to what that would be?
I did. I've looked at it a couple times over the years. I can't I would be sort of making it up.
Sure. But for you as a kid, when you were doing it, was there any type of feeling where you were like, oh, this is, I mean, because I think kids sort of play with fire in general, like lighting fireworks and stuff. But I mean, maybe to the nature that you were doing, where like lighting the house on fire is maybe a different level. But I'm curious, when it was happening, was there any type of conscious thought like, oh, this feels good to see these things like burning?
Maybe it's a control thing. Like you're in control of this.
Of a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then maybe shoplifting is kind of like this sort of rush, and it's something that's bad, but you're in control once again.
Yep.
Yeah. What's up, guys? We're going to take a break really quick because you are a grown child. Yes, you're a giant man child, and you just love stuffing your face and all the sugary cereals that you ate when you were a kid. When you were just a fat little 8-year-old, you would sit down on your couch and you would just eat these sugary cereals. And nowadays, if you try to do that, like I have, you feel terrible. You go, oh yeah, my blood pressure is rising. I do get a hangover from eating these cereals that I ate when I was a child. And that's what I want to talk to you about, Magic Spoon. This thing right here, freshly opened because I was just engorging myself. Magic Spoon is all the flavors that you love that come from your favorite nostalgic cereals, flavors like fruity, cocoa, frosted. Do those sound familiar to you? Because legally I can't say what they are, but those are the flavors that Magic Spoon has. And here's what's amazing about Magic Spoon. It's the same taste. It's all the flavor packed into every bite from those childhood cereals, but 13 grams of protein, 0 grams of sugar, and 4 grams of net carbs. Yeah, imagine that. 13 grams of protein. This is protein-packed cereal. So instead of being a little fat kid, you can sit down on Sunday morning, watch your cartoons, and get freaking jacked. Yeah. You'll look like Ronnie Coleman or something. You keep on crushing these, you're going to be diesel as hell. So instead of being a little fat boy, you can be a giant, strong man, but still keep your same habits of just sitting down and watching your cartoons. And for the listeners of this program, if you go to magicspoon.com/camp, that's right, magicspoon.com/CAMP, you're going to get $5 off your next order. $5 whole that you can save and apply to therapy for figuring out your disgusting, twisted childhood of stuffing your face with processed sugars and red dye 40 and stuff like that. But with Magic Spoon, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. It's all good. 13 grams of protein, none of the sugar, 4 grams of carbs. Get it today. Magic Spoon on Amazon or at your nearest grocery store. Or you can go to magicspoon.com/camp, CAMP for $5 off. Now let's get back to the show, you fatty. What's up, guys? We need to talk skincare. That's right. If you've ever heard me on Flagrant or even on this show, I have talked about my love for beef tallow. Yes, I'm not talking about some, lab-made sludge with 39 syllables and a bunch of chemicals and stuff. I'm talking about good old-fashioned beef tallow. Just, yes, it's cow fat. I know, it sounds crazy, but there's a reason that people have used this for thousands of years. This is the moisturizer that your ancestors used before, big lotion and chemicals and pharma companies came and messed it all up with seed oil scams and chemical cocktails, all right? Tallow has been used for thousands of years. The ancient Egyptians walking through the desert, they put on beef tallow to make their skin look good and feel good and not crack and actually hold up in the elements. Greeks and Romans, they used it to heal wounds and keep their skin from looking, like papyrus. And even your great-great-grandma, she probably used it. I don't know. And here's the great thing with beef tallow. It's got a bunch of, fat-soluble, vitamins A, D, E, and K, and it actually mimics your skin's natural oils because it comes from a living thing. That means your body recognizes it and says, oh yeah, this is good stuff. And you don't have some crazy reaction and, not like the $90 serums that smell like eucalyptus or whatever. I use it. My wife steals it. My baby uses it. Everyone in the family looks good and feels good with the power of beef tallow. So right before bed, I literally just take like a little fingerful, wipe it in my hands, and rub it on my face, and you kind of spread it in evenly. It comes in a bunch of great flavors. It smells amazing. And when I wake up, I feel moisturized and refreshed. And if you're interested, you can go now and get the best beef tallow on the market. I'll be honest, all beef tallow is basically the same. It all is great stuff. It's all very natural. This one is natural just like the rest, but this one is 30% off when you go to Evil Goods. That's right. When you go to Evil Goods, you subscribe, just click the link at the top of the video description or go to evilgoods.com/camp. Do it for your skin, do it for the cow, do it for your ancestors. All right, let's get back to the show. And so fast forwarding back into your late 20s and 30s, drugs come into the play a little bit more.
Yeah, like I bought a Harley, 31, 32, let's say, somewhere around there.
That's awesome. What Harley?
Heritage Softail.
Hell yeah.
And I started riding with a bunch of hard partying guys, and one of the guys was a big coke doer, and he and I, instantly bonded, and coke became going to strip bars on the Harleys, doing coke. That became like a normal thing, for a lot of years. I dated I got hooked up with a girl I dated off and on for a couple of years, living with her. She was a big coke doer. I had never tried ecstasy. She's like, "Have you ever done ecstasy?" I'm like, "No." She's like, "Mr. Hard Partying biker boy has never done ecstasy." She's like, "We're going to change that." So then we're buying hundreds of ecstasy tablets at a time. We're buying ounces of coke at a time. Like all our friends party, we might as well get extra, so that we have it for everybody. I'm like, that's a great idea.
Thoughtful.
So it's always there. When you got a suitcase in your basement with 3-4 ounces of coke in it, always.
Yeah.
It's just that you can hear it calling you. Like it's like, come down and do a bump.
Feel good.
Yeah.
Feel good immediately.
So those years like quickly became a blur.
And you mentioned the boundary thing, which I found very interesting, like how trauma can sort of take away your boundaries, even though you think you have them.
Yeah, well, your boundaries get ripped from you, so then you don't even know what a boundary means. Like I would say I had boundaries, but I blew through every boundary I set for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Over the year, like cocaine. All right, cocaine is a weekend drug only. And then you're doing coke every day of the week.
Mm-hmm.
So that boundary just got shot to hell. Drinking, is only if you're going out with the guys or on the weekends with your girl and the guys, and most definitely never before work.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're drinking before work, just to get yourself going in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Heroin is only for people on Skid Row and Kensington Avenue in Philly and in New York City. A well-educated middle-class guy will absolutely not do heroin, and I'm doing heroin. So just nothing stuck. I couldn't set a boundary that I could live within. Like they were meaningless to me.
Right.
Because if I felt uncomfortable, like we got to fix this uncomfortable feeling. And, I was never arrested. I had no criminal charges, throughout my life, but I was right there. I was right, I was right on the edge, I was importing steroids, doing steroids, in my 30s, and Homeland Security, confiscates package of them. And, I get this threatening letter. You basically get a get out of jail free card, one get out of jail free card. And I started, like, after all the nonstop women in my 20s, I started gambling, like going to the casinos, like every weekend. That became my new coping mechanism. Like when you would step through the doors of the casino and the sounds and the cocktail
The
waitresses
cigarettes
and the win or loss, the adrenaline flowing, all your shit just dissipates, just goes away as soon as you would step into that environment. So that was like that felt like home to me, and so I'm doing that for years. That became years of like gambling, and that's how I bought my Harley. Like I came home, like with $50,000. I stopped at a Harley Davidson dealership. I handed the guy 22,000 cash, and picked up a Harley a couple days later.
Wow.
I'm making $700 a week in the tire business. Like I eventually, after the construction thing, I'm doing nothing. I'm unemployed for 6 months, and my brother comes to me when I was around 30 and says, like, you're not doing anything. He goes, you want to open up a retread shop again? He's like, you and I? He goes, well, I got my retail store and I'm thinking about a retread shop, and you and I will do that. I'm like, and I had nothing else going on. I'm unemployed at the time. I'm like, fuck it, let's do it. So I'm making $700 a week, and yet I'm winning and losing tens of thousands of dollars. I went on this unbelievable run in the casinos, and I don't say this to brag, just like I just was like fearless when I bet, and I had a suitcase with hundreds of thousands of dollars in it. The casinos, like my biggest win was I won 152,000, and I had been up way over that, and then I lost, and then I had 152. I'm like, all right, I'm out. But I was up, $250,000. And then you're getting all the perks. Like I'm going to the suite at Giants Stadium. They're like, you want to go see the Giants play the Eagles down at Philly? We'll send a limo up to you. You don't even have to gamble. Like I'm like, all right, cool. I'm going out to Vegas. They're paying for my airfare out to Vegas. I had a convention in Palm Springs. They're like, oh, we'll fly you, from Vegas out to Palm Springs. The suites, bottles of Kettle One, Dom Perignon, just whatever you want. Like they would give me shopping sprees in the casinos, like the stores. Every piece of clothing I had back then had like an insignia of a casino on it. It's just like all my clothing came from casinos.
And how do you feel in this window?
Just money was meaningless to me. Like it was just a tool for me to use to not deal with my shit. Like I had no respect for money, and thus why it would come and go, And then I got to the point where I couldn't even wait for the weekends to go gamble, because you got a 5-day stretch where your pain is like rearing its ugly head, and you're just feeling uncomfortable. So it's like I start sports betting with the mob, so I can do that every day of the week. And within 6 months, like my hundreds of thousands are gone. I had 2 stock things that I had opened up with money. I also got investigated by the IRS Criminal Bureau for money laundering for all the cash I was putting into my account. A full audit on that. Like my life is like it's a train wreck.
Problem after problem.
Yeah. And so I'm bankrupt in 6 months sports betting with the mob, and I'm in debt to them for $77,000.
And how do they collect?
And I start getting the phone calls, like, your life's in danger, bro. You're not walking away from this. And then they want me to go rob a bank. Like, you are better off to go rob a bank, and if you get caught, you do 10 years. Big whoop. We're going to kill you if you don't pay us. This is what I'm dealing with on a regular basis. And I happen to be at my brother's tire shop, not the retread shop, his retail store, and his his store manager goes, "Hey, Clark, you got a phone call on line 1." I'm like, "Who the hell's calling me over here?" He's like, "I don't know." So I pick it up, and the guy goes, "This is Special Agent blah, blah, blah with the FBI." He goes, "Mr. Fredericks, I need to meet you at your other store on Thursday at 2:00. And I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. What's this about? I can't discuss anything on the phone, Mr. Fredericks. Please be at your Newton store Thursday at 2:00. And he hangs up the phone. And I'm like, like I'm partying, and I'm like, I go, the FBI isn't going to like get involved for buying some Coke. Like I'm not like doing kilos or anything, I'm like, and then, like I'm not putting two to two together with the mob. And the guy shows up and tells me, we have a confidential informant inside one of the major crime families, and that informant has relayed to us that there's a hit put on in your life for gambling debt, and we are legally obligated to notify you. And I was just like, great, just fucking great, So when I say I skirted, I was never, like right on the edge. Like, and this is how my life got away from me.
What happens with this gambling debt?
Well,
how do you resolve this?
I take calls for months, threats, death threats. They call my father, tell him, your son's life's in danger. You better pony up for him. I had already gone to my family. I didn't know what to do, so I had called Gamblers Anonymous, and I told the lady on the phone how much I was into the mob and that they're threatening my life. Like I wasn't going to go to the cops. That's not the type of dude I was. I didn't know what to do, so I called Gamblers Anonymous. And she had the director, call me back. She's like, "I'm going to have Ed Looney call you back." She had Ed Looney call me back, and he's like, "You're going to meet me at a meeting tomorrow night, and there's a bunch of hardcore, some are ex-mob guys, big gamblers, and I'll meet you there, and we'll go over your story with them and devise a plan." But the plan was to offer a payment plan, a monthly payment plan. And they're like, they're going to laugh at it, they're going to scream, but you got to stick to your guns. And that's what I did. And they're like, "You're fucking kidding, bro. Like, like I could only afford like $500 a month." And they're like, "That's not even going to cover the juice that we're racking on to your debt. Like, you're not even covering the juice." The guy's like, "If I go to my boss and tell him you're going to pay $500 on $77,000, he goes, you're going to put my life in danger. I can't even go tell him that." And so this went on and on and on. The FBI's like, "This isn't going to go away. Things are going to get worse. Here's my card. You need our help." And one day I get a phone call, and the guy just says, "You're a fucking dead man," and hangs up the phone. And I'm like, all right, so I'm constantly like just looking over my shoulder. I got my shotgun in my truck. I got a bat in my office. Just, living on edge constantly. And I never got another phone call. And nothing ever happened. And the guys in that gamblers meeting, what they said was the only thing that seems plausible is that the FBI's informant probably worked in the boiler room of the gambling, and the guys in because I was such a heavy bettor, they gave me no limit, so I could bet as much as I wanted, and they said when you're a bettor like that, they'll keep, that the house always has the odds, so they'll keep your bets to themselves and not turn it into the bosses, not put it in the book. So they're not killers themselves. They're just working in the boiler room. Like, the boss has the killers. And they can't go to the boss about you because they probably weren't turning in your bets.
And they've been skimming off the top.
They were skimming that. So they can only push you so far unless they want to try to do something themselves, but they're not usually that type of person. And it just stopped. And whether these guys got killed, whether they got arrested, what happened, that was 25 years ago. And
Wow.
after like 6 months of just daily, weekly calls, threats, that last phone call, you're a dead man, click, I never heard anything again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now we talk about feeling trapped, right?
Those were like the worst years of my life. Like that period. Well, that period from.
I mean, that must have been triggering so much.
Oh yeah, because they made comments. They were going to send guys up to rape me.
Oh,
fuck.
And I mean, they're using fear as a coercion tactic, and you can't tell anyone, and we're going to come get you. Like, it's all the same playbook.
I didn't want to die, but I just got to the point of fuck, whatever, man. It's just like whatever, whatever. My life is shit anyway. It's been shit since I was a kid. So whatever, it's like whatever they're gonna fucking do, whatever, man. That's sort of the mindset you adopt.
Yeah, it's an interesting feeling. I've heard people say that before. That's not the desire to die. It's just not caring if you live or don't.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like the drugs and riding fast bikes and, all of this is kind of the same feeling of like, who gives a shit? Who cares?
Yeah. I got buddies who are Hell's Angels. I'm selling drugs to them.
Mm-hmm.
In this, after, my late 30s, I hurt my back at work, and I got prescribed Vicodin. Never had a pain pill in my life, and just instantly fell in love with those things. And blew through 30 of them in a couple of days. Called the doctor back up. Those things worked great. I feel great. Then he's like, "That was a little quick." I go, "You got to get me more, doc." And he goes, "I'll give you 10 more. That's it." And that just that was unacceptable. So then I just start buying pills off the street, and thus begins a multi-year pain pill addiction. So it's just going from one thing to another, to another, to another, and we go into my 40s, and I didn't know I suffered from PTSD, from what happened to me as a kid. And something triggers my PTSD, and I fall into this deep depression. And it's just like this, it felt like a thick mattress on me, just holding me down. And it's just like you can't get out of this fog. It's just this thick, heavy fog that's just. And I would literally have to talk to myself like a baby to get out of bed in the morning. Come on, Clark, swing your legs out of bed. You can do it. Now stand up. Come on. Walk to the bathroom. Come on. And, that's when I started drinking before work. I mentioned that earlier. Like I don't know how to, I have no healthy coping mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just trying to figure it out on my own. Like, all right, I am literally depressed to the point of being immobile. Like, all right, let's have a drink in the morning just to try to get me going. And then it was, let's just do a couple bumps during the day just to keep me energized and going.
Yeah.
And it's just, spiraled, and I got my pain pill addiction, and, I was like a squirrel gathering nuts. I'd have a drawer of 500 pain pills and still feel like, ooh, that's only 2 weeks worth, we gotta get, more than that, and I get low on pain pills, and somebody I go to says, "I don't even know why you're fucking with those pain pills to begin with." He goes, "I got some packets of dope." He goes, don't kid yourself. You're doing dope. He goes, it's pharmaceutical dope, but it's dope. He goes, you might as well just do the real thing for $5 a packet instead of, what you're paying for pills. And I was just like, all right, fuck it. Give me some packets unless I start doing heroin.
Right.
So it's just one thing after another snowballs into another.
So now at this point,
and we're picking up steam too.
Right.
And things are not getting better. Like I said,
the pain is building and the anger is building. And at this point, by the time you're 40, you're now 30 years away from, that sort of initial traumatic incident.
Yeah.
How often are you thinking about that
you
incident?
Want a mint?
I would love one, actually.
All right. Are we allowed to do that in a podcast?
Why not? Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
How often are you thinking about that incident specifically? Is it coming up weekly?
I'm not thinking about it.
Like it's completely removed?
Yeah. There's something driving me though. Just uncomfortable, like anxious, depressed, panic attack. We got to solve that immediately. We got to get those feelings out of here. We are not going to let ourselves feel uncomfortable. And, so just doing, like I'm at the point now where one drug alone isn't enough to like take away my shit.
Would you call this rock bottom?
No, rock bottom's coming up.
And what happens then?
Rock bottom's when, I run into my abuser. It'd been at least 10 years since I've seen him.
And take me through that day.
I'm in a quick check deli. I don't know if you have quick checks around here, but I'm in a quick check getting a coffee, and the door opens up, and I just instinctively look up, and it's my, and he sees me, and he's like, "Hey, Clark!" Like yells out in the store, and like, this guy's going to start making his way over to me to hug me, pat me on the back, whatever. And I just go into a panic attack, like my mind's swirling, my heart's racing. I'm sweaty. I can't breathe. Like my vision's like getting funny. And all of a sudden I hear a young boy say his nickname that he used to make me say to him when I was younger. And I see that boy's about the age he beat me at. And that was it. Like everything just like ripped open and I ran out of there. We shoulder bumped. I ran past him. We hit shoulders. He's like, "Hey, where are you going?" And I got in my truck and I sped out of there and I pounding my steering wheel and I'm cursing and I'm spitting in my truck, yelling "motherfucker" over and over. And that was just like everything unraveled after that, going to work when I was depressed felt like climbing Mount Everest. And with a month after seeing him, I couldn't climb Mount Everest anymore. And I just left the family business with my brother, just walked away. Buying grams of Coke no longer worked anymore. I'm buying ounces of Coke. And I got free time on my hands. And I got Dennis Pegg on the forefront of my mind. And all I can think every day is that he's still abusing boys 30 years later. Still abusing boys 30 years later. And that just like haunted in me. And I spiraled downward for months and got to the point where I had to go confront him. And went to his house one night. I hadn't been back to that house since he me.
You still remembered where it was? Like you could just
Yeah. He lived 3 minutes away from me, I didn't know if he still lived there. And I assumed, so he had a long driveway, parked halfway down his driveway, ran up the driveway. His front door was open. His screen door was shut. There he is, sitting there watching TV.
And the plan is to just confront him.
Yeah. Well, I knew he was a gun nut. I took a knife with me. You can say whatever reason for taking the knife. You know, here's a guy who's been children for 40 years. He is the firearms instructor. Every cop, everybody in law enforcement, every year has to get recertified with a firearm. He's the firearm instructor for 2 counties, Morris County and Sussex. This guy had 36 guns in his house, swords, a dozen knives. If you've been kids for 40 years, wouldn't you have on every chair a holster?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you have under every table a gun? Like you got to be like, I've pushed my luck. You know, something's going to happen eventually. So I was prepared to go into that house and get shot. Again, I'm not looking to die, but I just don't care. You know, I'm willing to put my life on the line right now. And I go up to his door. I rip his screen door open, and I'm standing there in his doorway. It's like 9:30 at night, and this is the part that gets me. But you know, like we're trying to think that predators, pedophiles are normal, are human. They're not human. This guy isn't human. You're a 12-year-old boy, and you're whispering in his ear, just another minute so I can make sure I come, you know, and you're beating your dog in front of him to death to keep him silent. So people view him as human. He's not, that's like, can you get more evil than that? That's evil. That's not a human. And this guy looks calmly over his shoulder as I'm standing in his doorway and goes, "Hey, how are you?" And it just seemed like the most incredible thing to say at that moment. Like, get down on your knees and be like, "Dude, I am so sorry. I know why you're here. I am sorry for what happened. I'm sorry for what I did to you. I always thought you or somebody else would show up. Let's talk. Please forgive me. I'm sick. I need help." Whatever it may be. No, just, "Hey, how are you?" that like set me off. Like, whether I had a plan of action or not, when he said that, I had a plan of action.
Mm-hmm.
I go, "Hey, how am I, motherfucker? Let me show you how the fuck I am." And that face I kept behind closed doors, the face of the smile that I showed the world, was gone. The face behind closed doors was out. He's seeing the face he made of rage and hate and violence that he instilled in me. He's seeing that on my face. He's the first one to see it. And I raced across his living room. We got into a violent fight. I'm stabbing at him. He's punching me. At one point, I put a knife right through my hand. I sever all the ligaments and tendons in my hand. And the fight really only lasted a couple minutes, 2-3 minutes. He slipped in the blood that was both of ours on the floor. And he was sort of like up against a wall. And I knelt down in front of him, and I looked him in the eye. And I said, "It's not so fun with little boys now, is it, Dennis?" And I slit his throat. And that was it. And you know, I would say I've had 2 people who have reached out to me over the years, one female, one male, who said they were abused and said they would never think of doing what I did. Whether they were actual abuse victims or not, I don't know. Every other abuse victim has reached out to me and said, "You did exactly what I've dreamt of." And you know, you can look at their profile on Facebook or Instagram and see if they're liberal or see if they're Republican. And it doesn't matter if they're male, female, Republican, Democrat, you did exactly what I've dreamt of doing to my abuser, because the horror of what they put you through is so traumatic. The only thing your mind can think to do to even the score is to kill them. But you don't heal from abuse. You don't heal from trauma by adding more trauma to your system. That's not how you heal. I stopped an evil piece of shit, not a human, an evil piece of shit from ever harming another child. Is that a good thing? Yes. Did it in any way heal me? Absolutely not. You know, like, so like, and I've had so many people who have like sent me messages. I'm going to go do what you just did, or what you have done. I'm going to go do the same. And I'm like, dude, like, don't do it. You know, like, I've been to prison. Like, prison's hell. Like, you're literally, they win. They win by dragging your life to the grave in shit. So, like, had I gotten a life sentence, Dennis Pegg won. He would have won. Like, he would have controlled me from age, you could say 6 when he first touched me, all the way to the grave. Like, you can't allow your abuser to control you to the grave. You can't. That's the sinful part of it. Like, you can't give these pieces of shit that much control. You can't. And by killing them, that's what you do. Like, they're controlling you to the grave by sitting in a prison cell for the rest of your life, being tortured every day in prison. Prison is hell, dude. You just can't do that. Because your life does not have to be forfeited just because you were then abused. It doesn't. You can get past it. You can heal from it. You got to address it. You can't keep it to yourself and think you're going to have a normal life. It's all going to come out. It's where midlife crises come from. Like, all my therapists are like, like, my brother kept it at bay by building a business and a family, but it was there and it was just waiting to come out. I kept it at bay in my 20s by sleeping with women, in my 30s by gambling, riding Harleys, living fast, coke into my 30s and 40s, partying, drugs and alcohol. I kept it at bay, but it was there. It was waiting, and it's going to come out. So you got to address it. Like, I am the face of, you have to address your pain, you know? Like, I've done what everybody says they want to do, and I'm here to say it's not the way you heal. It's not gonna. It's not gonna work. You know.
If you wanted to take a different course of action, of course, sharing the pain earlier, telling your dad when he asked, and coming forth with that, and maybe getting professional help in your childhood, all of those things would have certainly helped. But in the event that you hadn't done any of those things, and the only thing you could change was driving up to that house, what would you have done differently? Would you have gone to law enforcement? Could the law even carry out a case against this guy? Like, what could you have done?
Well, I have my own podcast, and I actually had the prosecutor in my case come on. And one of the questions I asked him, what could I have done different? And he said statute of limitations had long run out. There's really, legally, there was nothing you could have done different. Nothing. This guy had gotten out from under a minimum of 3 cases brought against him by young boys. That one, the mother in the Dunkin' Donuts, her and her son filed charges. He would come, she worked the third shift. He would come and sit during her third shift, midnight on, and threaten her life, threaten her son's life. You guys are going to pull those charges or your son's dead. You're dead. And they eventually pulled their charges.
Oh, what the fuck?
2 other Boy Scouts went away on the jamborees. Like you would mention, like, oh, I'm going to be nervous if my son joins the Scouts and goes on a weekend trip, 2 different scouts at different times went on weekend jamborees with Pegg and came home with hickeys all over their body. And their parents like saw them with their shirt off. Like, what are those marks? And then like it went down below their belt line. And a mother took her son to the state police, filed charges. The father came the next day, recanted those charges, said, I don't want my son labeled gay. The other child with the hickeys, the parents filed charges, and whether it was a week, 2, 3, 4 down the road, they said our son's too traumatized to testify. We're dropping the charges. So he got out of those. Another instance was the state police investigated a case, put together a dossier, took it to the prosecutor's office, and whether it got swept under the rug, whether they thought there wasn't enough evidence, nothing ever came of it. So that's 4 there.
So what comes from the rest of his life? I mean, he's continues to be in the police force.
Yeah.
He retires.
He retired and became a park ranger, and I gave a speech at a rehab center, and there was like from 18-year-olds up to 70-year-olds, and this afterwards, like everybody's coming up to shake my hand, and this old guy comes up, and he didn't tell me his name, but he said, I worked with Dennis Pegg up at Stokes Forest when he became a ranger after he retired from the sheriff's department. And I went to the state police because he was renting cabins every weekend and bringing young boys to those cabins. And I just knew what was going on in those cabins. And I went to the state police and said, you got to set up a camera. He rents the same cabin over and over, and he's bringing young boys there with him. And they're like, we can't just go set up a camera. It's not how it works. He goes, and nothing ever became of it. So, my friend's wife works, in the sheriff's department, and she sat in on a lot of meetings on Dennis Pegg after I got arrested. And she said, easily over 100, victims, just from all the various walks of life he was involved in.
I mean, it just seems like such an insane cover-up. I mean, I don't know what else to call it. You have 100+ victims over 50 years.
You got multiple charges filed, dropped.
I don't know if it seems like too many cases to be negligence.
It's just like a blind eye got turned,
So now, immediately after the event where you two confront each other, you're holding a knife. Is it true it was the knife? It was like a scouting knife?
He gave me that knife. Yeah, like as a Christmas gift when I was younger, and he taught me he bought me a stone set, oil stone set to sharpen. And, I'm sorry, he didn't give me the knife. He gave me the sharpening set. He gave my brother a knife, and it's engraved, to J, from Dennis.
So the knife that he taught you how to sharpen.
So I had my same hunting knife from being a young kid that he taught me to sharpen, and I kept it razor sharp throughout my whole life. So that's one thing he did. He did good, was taught me how to sharpen my knife properly.
There's something poetic about that.
There is something poetic.
Right, to kill him with the knife he taught you to sharpen.
Yeah.
So now you're standing in his home, the same home that you were in, and he's dead.
He's dead.
And what is the immediate feeling that you have?
That's why I try to tell people, like, everybody's, people say, did all your problems just dissipate? And I'm like, no, no, like I instantly said, I'm fucked, because my hand is literally gushing blood.
Mm-hmm.
I'm covered in blood. I knew this knife wound was going to be my downfall. You can't just walk into a hospital and not expect the cops to like call the hospital, a couple days down the road as they're investigating a murder and be like, did you have anybody come in with any, odd wounds? So I just knew that was going to be my downfall. But no, like it wasn't, and again, like people who want to contemplate killing their abuser, it is soul hurting. It hurts your soul to go do what I did. It's not therapeutic, like there's nothing cleansing. It's not healthy. It was brutal. It was gory. It was bloody. It was violent. It was a fight to the death. And it hurts. It hurts. It literally hurts your soul. It's just.
So what is your plan at this point? You need to get medical attention for your hand. Do you just leave?
Yeah.
What happens immediately after?
I leave and I call the girl I was dating at the time to come over. I call my buddy to come over and say goodbye to them. And my mother had just gotten back from Florida. And I sent my buddy up. It's like midnight. I'm like, go get my mother. And I'm like, I just took care of Dennis Pegg so he could never hurt another kid. And I couldn't even tell her that night that he had done anything to me. And she's like, what do you mean you took care of Dennis Pegg? I'm like, let's not play games. We know what he's all about. We know that he drove Jeff to commit suicide. Look at Jay's life. I took care of him so he could never harm another child. And she's like, why? Why you? And I just, somebody had to, Mom. I still am locked in silence. Like couldn't tell her. And I was arrested the next day, house was surrounded.
How do they know it's you?
That's it's a long drawn out thing.
Okay.
My mother told my sister. My sister's like, we got to do a well-being check. She had a well-being check done. Dominoes started falling into place. Like maybe Clark's all fucked up on drugs and just talking out of his ass. And my mother's like, he's got a wound that's severe. Mm-hmm. And all right, so maybe he did have an attack with Dennis. Maybe Dennis is still alive and we can save Clark's life from spending life in prison by
save him.
Getting to Dennis before he dies.
What's up, guys? We're going to take a break really quick because I got to tell you about a dirty little secret, okay? The insurance industry doesn't want you to know this. Well, basically what the insurance companies do is that they profit by holding on to your money as long as possible. You pay them every month, and then eventually when an accident happens, they try to deny or delay your claim so that they can keep their profits going. I mean, it goes even worse. When in court, the insurance companies want jurors to think that the at-fault driver, a mom that rear-ends someone, she's a single mom, and they think that she is going to be paying the verdict amount. Meanwhile, it's really the insurance companies who are going to be covering the costs. And that's why I want to tell you about the good folks over at Morgan & Morgan, because they will take on the case, and they are almost always going after the big insurance companies and not the individuals at fault. Morgan & Morgan fights hard for their clients, and these corporations know that, and it pisses them off. A recent client in Pennsylvania just received $29 million. The insurer's best offer, $500,000. Yeah. There's another client in Florida that received $20 million, and the last offer from the insurance company was $0. There's a reason why Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. So if you are ever injured or dealing with an insurance company that doesn't want to pay up their fair share, you could go check out Morgan & Morgan. That's right. Hiring the wrong law firm can be disastrous, and hiring the right law firm could, be a big, substantial increase to your settlement. And Morgan & Morgan makes it so easy to get started. Their fee is free unless they win. There's literally no risk. Unless they win your case, you're not paying a dime. And with Morgan & Morgan, it's never been easier. I'm telling you. You just go to forthepeople.com. That's right, forthepeople.com, and use the code GAGNON, GAGNON, or dial pound law. That's pound 529. That's forthepeople.com/Gagnon, or dial pound law. That's pound 529. And this is a paid advertisement. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's get back to the show. What's up, guys? We're going to take a break really quick because I'm sitting here in my beautiful tent, as you can see, every week, day in, day out. And people always ask, they say, Mark, how do I have a tent like that? I want to sit in a beautiful tent and invite a lover, a friend, someone that I appreciate and adore. I want to give them a good time inside my tent. Well, it's easy. Thanks to the good folks over at BlueChew.com. That's right. Blue Chew is the original OG brand offering chewable tablets. And what do these tablets do? Oh, I'm glad you asked. They are going to give you just a stronger, harder, and longer lasting sexual performance. That's right. They're going to help you pitch a tent any place, anywhere. And the best part, it's all done online. That means you don't have to go to a doctor's office and, talk to them and be like, oh, I'm feeling some type of way. Look, this is not for people that are, lacking necessarily. This is for people that want to have the best experience of their life, whether it's Valentine's Day, birthday, a funeral, who knows? Whenever you need it, you never know when you could use Blue Chew. And we have a special deal for the listeners of this program. That's right. Try your first month of Blue Chew for free. That's right. Completely free. Mark, is it going to work for me? Hey, it's free. Why not just try it? Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring this podcast. All right, now let's get after it and let's get back to the show. So next morning you wake up, cops down the block.
Not instantly, but pretty soon after. Pretty soon after, and I woke up and I just like it just hit me. I'm lying in bed. I'm like, what the fuck have you done, dude? Like, holy shit, man, your life is done. It's over. Like, this is it. Life is kaput. And I was like, wow. I allowed that by not addressing that pain, it took me straight to shit. And it's just like, in my mind, my mind said, we can come up with something to get us out of this. Let's just get some drugs and alcohol in our system. So I had a whole bunch of Xanax there. I poured some Xanax out. I had a half of a vodka drink that I made when I went to bed that night, and I put my finger in, swirled it up, and took a bunch of Xanax and drank that. And I got up and went to the bathroom and brushed my teeth, and I went out, and I wasn't even paying attention to the windows. I went right to the kitchen, to the refrigerator, and I poured a glass of wine, and I look out the window with my wine, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? There was a dozen minimum cop cars out there, and there's cops behind trees and rocks, and the shed we had out back, and just everywhere, guns out. And I'm like, like that feeling, like, wow, it's over already before I can even contemplate some sort of stupid idea, whether to go kill myself or whatever it would be. Like, it's already done. And I'm like, so I chug that wine, I pour another, I chug half of that. I hear out of a loudspeaker, Mr. Fredericks, come out of your house with your hands up. And I chugged that. In a little bit of irony, we need some levity after all this heaviness. I had seen a state trooper buddy of mine at a bar, a high school friend who's a state trooper at a bar a couple months earlier. And he's like, hey, you want some shirts and hats? I was like, yeah. So we went out to his car. He gave me a couple state police shirts and a hat. And so I went in my room and I put my state police shirt on. I'm like, this should get me out of this. Like, once they see I'm one of them.
Oh, he backs the blue?
Yeah. So I walked out and, spread eagle on my lawn and taken away to the barracks.
And you had mentioned that when the police had arrested you, that one of the cops actually had said something to you while you're getting arrested.
Yeah, this guy, Howie Ryan, he turned out to be an angel. He was a lieutenant in the state police. And he ran the crime scene. So the CSI team, crime scene investigation team. And he covered, he covers 5, 6 of the northern counties. They break it up. So his CSI team was in charge of 5 counties, and he lived in Stillwater. I'd never met him, didn't know him. And so he ran the CSI at Pegg's house. He comes in to the holding cell I'm in at the state police barracks, and first words out of his mouth is, I got to apologize to you. And I'm like, what the hell are you apologizing to me for? And he's like, I've heard rumors about this scumbag for a long time. He's like, I can't arrest somebody on rumors. I need victims. I need facts. He's like, so I was never able to stop him. I was never able to even come close to arresting him, but I've heard rumors over the years, and I just want to apologize for never stopping him, and I apologize for whatever you went through. And I was like, all right. And at first, I felt pretty good, and then he left the room, and I was just like, I sat there like every fucking buddy knows about this guy, and yet I had to flush my life away to stop him. Like you can't give a pedophile 45-year reign of terror. Mm-hmm. How is that allowed? Yeah. There has to be some way to stop them other than a victim committing murder and flushing their life away.
Yeah.
And then Howie, he came back in again. They had to take pictures. They got to strip you, look for, tattoos, gang signs, whatever. They got to do this whole thing. He comes in again and he's like, look, man, my detectives are in another room with detectives from the prosecutor's office, and they're ready to interrogate you. He goes, your blood's all over that scene. He goes, this isn't a whodunit. He goes, I got you. He goes, but it doesn't mean your life's over. He goes, if you go into that room, though, and just start running your mouth, he goes, your life could be over. You could fuck yourself and spend life in prison. He goes, so do not go into that room and open your mouth. Request a lawyer and do not say another word. And he asked me 3 times, do you understand what I'm saying? I want you to exercise your 5th Amendment rights and request a lawyer. And I go to him, but I don't even have a lawyer. He goes, I'm going to take care of that for you. On his cell phone, he called this big lawyer in our county, George Daggett. And George answered. He said, George, I need you to send over a retainer to the state police barracks, immediately. And he's like, for who? And he goes, Clark Fredericks. And he goes, what'd he do? And he goes, it's a murder case. And he goes, okay. And George Daggett faxed over a thing. I am Clark Fredericks' attorney. Do not interrogate him until I get there. I will be there. They took me into the room. Howie went out. They took me in the room, and I just said, I'm not saying a thing without a lawyer. And they're like, you really want to handle this way? You're in a lot of trouble, So my advice to anybody who gets arrested, they're not there to help you. You know, speaking can only harm you.
Yeah.
They are not the judge.
Yeah.
So when a cop says, you talk to me, it'll be good for your sentence. The judge gives the sentence. A cop doesn't give a sentence.
Yeah.
So
and people always
they're just there to get more evidence.
Oh, I'm going to look guilty if I ask for a lawyer. It's like, you're going to look guilty if you don't. Okay. So ask for a lawyer. Just
no matter what you're there for, just keep your mouth shut and let it play out in the courts.
Right.
The cops can't dictate what your sentence is going to be. They only gather evidence.
So now you speak to your attorney, and now you're just waiting in a jail cell.
Yeah, no, and that guy didn't even turn out to be my attorney. I picked somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
But and a bunch of guys in the barracks like went after Howie. Like, what the fuck did you say to Fredericks in there? He goes, I didn't say anything other than he should exercise his Fifth Amendment rights. He goes, they're like, how the hell did Daggett get involved in this already? He's like, I don't know. That's who Fredericks requested. You know, I placed a call to him. They're like, oh, this stinks, Howie. You know, he's like, go fuck yourself. You know, he had 2 years left. He was the top dog in there. He was Trooper of the Year for solving a murder case one year. So, you know, the guy wasn't, you know, some fly-by-night rookie.
That's awesome.
So he's like, go fuck yourselves.
But now you're sitting in the same jail.
Now I'm in it. Right. That's the another irony, you know, like, and they put me into a suicide cell.
But it's the same jail that Dennis Pegg...
Where he patrolled.
Where he was patrolling.
Inmates and took inmates home. And
so what are you thinking now that you're in Dennis Pegg's
I am thinking
old jail?
I'm a dead man. Like, I heard about him abusing inmates going back to 13 when my father said something.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing ever happened. So here it is all these years later. So I'm thinking he's a protected guy. Like, nothing ever, like, every year I'm thinking, like, you know, like, all right, they know he's molesting inmates. It can't be allowed that you can take inmates home to mentor them and molest them. Something's got to happen. Nothing would happen. I knew Mike Finari. My father told me Mike Finari had filed a lawsuit. I'm like, all right, Mike's lawsuit will put him away. I didn't know about the Boy Scout Hickey things until later on.
Mm-hmm.
And then nothing ever came with Mike's lawsuit. And I'm just like, he'll never be stopped. He's untouchable. So I'm thinking when I'm in that jail, these guys protected one of their own, even though he was a piece of shit, and they're going to beat the hell out of me. Whether I survive this beating or not, I have no idea. And that's what I waited for in that suicide cell, just like for a gang of them to come in or to take me into a closet room, you know, out of the camera's eye, and it never happened. And one by one, guy after guy, you know, like they have to come in and do cell checks every so often. Guy would come in and be like, hey, man, I'm hearing a lot of dirt about this guy, Pegg. You just got to keep your mouth shut. Don't talk to any of us. Like, if somebody tries to get you into a conversation, just don't say anything to them. And then the next guy would come in, like, you need anything? Like, am I allowed a pillow in here? They're like, yeah, you can have a pillow. Comes back with 2 pillows for me. Next guy would come in. Hey, man, you got to let this thing play out. There's a lot of stuff swirling around the community right now. Just hang in there and just don't talk to anybody in here. You know, so like, and that was every guy that came on and came into the cell would say something similar like that. You know, like, hey, man, you know, you're in a suicide cell. I don't want to see anything happen to you. Just, you know, like, just, you'll get through this, you know, just trying to pump me up a little. You know. And I sat there for 3.5 years in the county jail. I eventually took a plea deal to, I had 30 to life hanging over my head, 1st-degree murder. And I can't tell you, like, how that suffocates you, bro. Like, it's just, you know, like I talk about that wet blanket feeling. This was like just a wet blanket.
This is the ultimate trapped suffocation, imprisonment, literally.
Yeah, man. And
is it triggering a lot of things for you?
Yeah. Like, cause these guards strip you naked, like at the blink of an eye. Like, so I'm having to get stripped naked by a guy who represents Pegg to me.
Literally a police officer.
Yeah, a sheriff's officer like he was in the jail.
And what is it giving you panic attacks? While
it would just, you know, like, but you just got to do it. You know, it's just like they tell you strip. You got to strip.
At what point do you get therapy for the first time?
Well, I didn't. I didn't get actual therapy till I went to prison.
Until you were sentenced, and
so you're
so for 3.5 years
you're kept in the county jail until you get sentenced. So, but I started. I had people from all over the country sending me books
because now this is a national news story.
Yeah, this was worldwide news. Like, you know, it went. You know, man murders his Boy Scout leader who he says molested him. You know, it's I'm on the front page of the LA Times, the Baltimore Sun, New York Post, Uh,
How does it feel to have this secret that you pushed down for so long now open to everyone?
oh, it was horrible, but I was forced into it.
Right.
Like I couldn't hide from it.
Was there
But
any
it's like for the world to this thing, that I guarded it like it was, a diamond inside of me. Now it's just like it's out there.
was there any part of it that was liberating, that it was just gone?
It was tough to feel liberated, when you got this life sentence hanging over you.
Right.
But I started getting letters upon letters upon letters, and it was from a lot of classmates who said the same thing happened to me, Clark.
What the fuck?
And it was just nothing but love, and I'm so sorry, and you're a hero, and you did what I wanted to do. Like from all around the country, I'm getting letters, not just my classmates, like just everybody opening up to me. And I'm like, and it just started like dawn on me, like, what a fucking idiot. Like, I just flushed my life away over something I thought would demasculate me, like make me less than a man, and here everybody's telling me how strong I am, what a hero I am. I love you. Just nothing but love and support. And your mind tells you people look at you as weak, forgetting, people look at you as a pillar of strength for addressing your pain and healing from it.
Yeah.
That's what they look at you as. Like, I interviewed for my thing a retired NYPD officer. This guy is jacked. Like he is like pump daddy. and he was as a little boy by his next door neighbor repeatedly. And he lived in silence, and he became a cop, and he became a functioning alcoholic cop, and he became a womanizing cop, and he blew through marriages and hurt tons of women like I did. And he stumbled across, a clip of me talking about my abuse. And he's like, if I'm going to have any type of life, he's in his 50s, retired from the force. It's like, if I'm going to have any type of salvageable life, I got to address this thing. And he reached out to me. First it was just with a couple short little messages. Then it was longer messages. Then it was, I want to come on your show, but I'm afraid, I don't want to be looked at as gay or a sissy or weak. And I'm like, dude, it's going to be the complete opposite. You're going to have to trust me on this. People aren't going to look at you as gay or weak or a sissy or a wimp. People are going to, when you address this and you speak about it, people are going to think you're amazing. And he did. And, it was just an outpouring of love for him. And this woman in his town, this gorgeous woman in his town, reached out to him and said, same thing happened to me as a kid. Can we have a coffee? And they went and had coffee, and she told him her story, and he shared more of his. And he calls me up, and he's like, dude, I am head over heels in love. I found the love of my life. I'm like, what? He's like, from your show. He's like, this girl reached out to me. And I'm like, didn't I tell you everything would change, bro? Like you were so, your mind had, he's like, you were right about everything, man. He goes, my life just completely changed since I addressed this. So like,
yeah, that's awesome.
It was totally rewarding,
Yeah.
and that's just over and over, with the people I've had on that have said that.
I've heard that the quote said that the things you truly want exist on the other side of what you fear the most.
Yeah.
And that feeling of, oh, I can't confront this. If I say this, it'll be that. It's actually the liberation on the other side is you got to go through the fear, though.
Yeah, you have to. So I read this book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor.
It's an all-time great book.
Yeah, it's like everybody, every person locked up reads it.
Oh, really? I didn't know it was such a popular prison book.
It's big in prison.
I mean, good. It's a great book.
Yeah, and in it was a line, I'll paraphrase, like, when you are faced with a situation you cannot change, you have to change yourself. And I was like, wow, like my situation, I'm facing life in prison. this may not change. I'm going to have to change myself to adapt to this. And it was just like a light bulb. And I just read it over and over and over. And then I read the book, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, which was on mindfulness. I scoffed at meditation or mindfulness earlier in life, like that simply wasn't going to happen. And I just started putting into effect how to take back control of my mind. He gave you tools to take back control of your thoughts. The thoughts like 24/7 when I was locked up, just like our minds hate the present. They want to go past or forward. So it was either going back to the abuse, back to the murder, or life in prison, back, murder. And that was it. I was just a yo-yo with those thoughts. And then I just learned to just like be in the moment, practice a mantra, when I would walk, I'd be sitting in the day room and it's just chaos in there on the day room tier. And in my mind, I'm just repeating my mantra over and over and over and over and over and over, just trying to keep my mind from going to a dark place or going to the future. Just like, right, we're going to stay right in the present here and just, be present. And I did that. I got blessed with a 5-year sentence. I took a plea deal, 2nd-degree manslaughter. The judge gave me the minimum. He apologized on the record for having to send me to prison for a single day. Gave me the minimum. I had to go to Newark, New Jersey, to Northern State Prison right by the airport there. And my very first day there, a therapist came to my cell and she said, "I can't believe you're here. I followed your case when it was on TV." And she goes, "I just saw your name come across my computer and I came right over. Would you start therapy with me?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And so it took me having to go to prison to get therapy for the first time in my life, which is another irony. Yeah. And then I joined, she ran a group class for childhood trauma. And she goes, we would have at most 10 guys in the class. She goes, every friggin' inmate in here should be, every inmate has childhood trauma, but guys don't address anything. What was shocking to me is I'm in my cell one day and our tier ran GED classes, which most of the tiers did. But at most I ever saw out there was 4 guys. It was usually 2 to 4. And I was like, that's all who, need their GED. Well, we had, the same guards worked the same shifts all the time. And then a couple months down the road, the guard who worked that morning shift, the regular guard wasn't there. And this new guy, called out, "All right, GED classes." And he started to do a roll call of all the people that should be coming out. And it was literally every cell. It was a 2-tier thing. It was every cell, top and bottom. He's calling out 95% of the guys for GED classes.
Wow.
I was like, all these fucking guys are in here, need their GED, are here because they don't have education, because they had shitty upbringings, and they're not even taking a free GED while they're here. Like, what a waste.
Yeah.
That was shocking to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so once you start going to therapy, do things kind of start to click in place? Do you start to kind of see how the behavior was connected to the trauma?
Yeah, I everything, like everything you and I just went through, I go through with her.
Does it blow your mind? I mean, does it feel like you're exiting the Matrix or something?
Yeah, it's just like, man, what the fuck? I'd just be like, what the hell, man? Like everything I did in life goes right back to that.
Yeah.
Like it just dictated all my behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Just couldn't commit to a relationship, couldn't commit to a job, drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex, not wanting to be trapped, just, running, just everything, instead of healing, and so I've just been on a healing journey, man.
Yeah. And that initial trauma just creates more trauma. I wonder if there's people listening to this that have never dealt with people that have been, that had these kinds of childhood abuse stories, that it's not necessarily, everything is because of that one event. It's that one event caused everything. And that one event caused the lack of intimacy with the relationship. And then the lack of intimacy with the relationship then caused your next you endured trauma from that first relationship. And then your next relationship, you still had baggage from the first one. And then that created more baggage, and it all compounds, and it creates this debt of trauma that, until you start to address the initial thing, continues to build on itself.
Yeah.
And it just creates this ripple throughout your entire life that, I mean, is the biggest suffocation of all.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it all comes down to you have to confront, you have to like finally address the 500-pound gorilla in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do a little self-analysis. Like, just take a step back and figure out why you're doing the things you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why are you going from one destructive relationship after another? We replicate in life what we knew in our childhood.
Right.
Like, I have just so many women that reach out to me who are just nonstop with these horrible relationships because their early childhood was horror,
right?
I've heard just like, this is normal to me.
I've heard it said that we seek the pain that we feel most comfortable with.
Yeah.
And that this, if you had an abusive father, for example, like it's possible that the male relationships you emulate later have that same pain cycle that you had, early in childhood, and without even being cognizant that, oh, I'm replicating these things that I experienced early on. And it's not your fault that these things happen to you or that you were born to the situation. You're the victim of it, but you have the ability and the freedom to break yourself from these cycles. And that's a very liberating feeling. But to be stuck in it is just, without knowing, it's a different type of hell.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you're in prison and people look at your paperwork and they see what you're in for, are they cool with it?
You don't go around like, you hear this, there's a couple loudmouth dudes on YouTube who spout off about their prison life.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how it was for me, at least. Maybe California is so different. I had my article from the front page of our local paper, Fredericks murders, Boy Scout leader, and whatever. I had sent that to myself to prison when I left the county jail. I gave it to somebody. I'm like, send this envelope to me, wait a day or two, and then mail it to me. And you got to go to this place, a central receiving part of the prison to get classified. They gotta find out, if you got diseases, if you got AIDS, if you got gang affiliations. They got to figure out what prison best suits you. So I had that, and you can send yourself mail there. So I had this envelope sent to me there, which I got while I was there. So I didn't have people weren't asking me for paperwork. I got this one bunkie in prison though. He's a young blood, off the hook, just, whew. He was a live wire. And he came into my cell, and he's like, the only 50-year-old white men in prison are pedophiles. If you're a fucking pedophile, I'm going to fucking beat you to death right now. And I was like, I'm the complete opposite of a pedophile. He goes, yeah, that's what they all say. And I reached under my thing, and I took out and I said, there you go, bro. My article from the newspaper. And he's like, oh, cool, bro. He just changed it. He's like, cool. So nobody asked me for paperwork.
So there was some respect in the prison for.
Yeah. This other dude, he made hooch on our tier,
mm-hmm.
and he made a thing of hooch, and he goes, Clark, you can have all the hooch you want for what you did. I was like, nah, I'm good, man.
I mean, you got to wonder if there's an element. I think this is actually coming up a little bit now, like within rap music, but so many people within impoverished, poor communities, many of them, black and brown, that get sexually abused, never talk about it. And so I wonder how many of these guys in prison, some of the toughest dudes you can imagine, that got sexually abused as kids.
Oh, absolutely.
And even in prison, never brought it up. Or maybe they lived lives of, crime, drugs, gang violence.
Well, it's not like in prison, you can't go around like showing your cards, like showing your weakness.
Right.
You can't go like in that group therapy class. We all had to take a vow amongst each other that nothing left that class. Like we could openly talk in this class. We could cry. We could hug. We can't mention a thing outside of these walls.
Someone could get killed.
Yeah. And the therapist was like, you're instantly booted out of here if anybody brings up anything that's mentioned in this classroom. And, so we had to trust each other for that. And, guys would share, their horror stories in there. And, but that was the only environment. When I was in the county jail, dude after dude came up to me, because like I got like 3 different papers sent to me, but other guys, say another 4 to 6 would get newspapers. So there's always newspapers on the tier, and they would see, my molestation is splashed all over the front page along with murder. And guys would come up and sit down next to me. I'm here for the same thing, I'm here because I was molested as a kid. I became a heroin addict and started stealing and started thieving, and then another guy would come up and but guys in prison didn't come up to me and share that. In jail they did, but not in prison. Just in that group class we did.
Right.
Yeah.
And so at the Newark prison, you serve how many years there?
I had to serve a year there.
Okay.
So I did 3.5. I was supposed to do 4 years, 3 months. They kept me an extra 3 months. For whatever bullshit reason, I got called down to the parole office, and the guy's like, when I had like 2 months to go, he's like, you're not getting out in 2 months. And I'm like, why? Because that was my 85%, the NERA Act, No Early Release Act, 85% was 4 years, 3 months out of 5. And, he's like, you don't have enough commutation time because you spent so much time in the county jail compared to what your sentence is. You don't have that good time. He goes, so you have a 85% date, but you also have a max date. And he goes, they're keeping you to your max date. So, it was 4 years, 6 months, and a couple days. And so I had to do an extra 3 months.
And then once you're released, how do you start putting your life back together?
Well, I still got 3 years of parole when I get released. And, they're piss testing you. They're seeing you twice a week early on. Then it's once a week, constantly testing you. I instantly became an advocate for getting a new law adopted in New Jersey for statute of limitations when somebody can sue their abuser or the organization that held their abuser. I started as an advocate. I sort of like fell into it. I went and saw this high-profile law firm. An article came across my phone. When you Google stuff, all of a sudden you start getting news articles related to what you Google. So I must have Googled something about abuse or molestation. And this article about these 3 Boy Scouts in the county next to me who were suing their Boy Scout leader came across, and it mentioned the law firm they were using. So I was like, screw it. I'm going to call this law firm. So I called the law firm, got in touch with this lawyer, went and saw him, and he's like, the way the law states now, you have no case. He goes, I know some of the advocates working to overturn the law. I know them personally. He goes, maybe your story's so over the top, you can sway some of the senators that are holding this up, specifically Senator Sweeney. And maybe your story can help get a new law. So I became an advocate. I went in there for selfish reasons, and I walked out of that office representing every abuse victim in the state. And I became an advocate and started meeting with senators, and I got to testify before a grand jury, or not a grand jury, before a Senate committee. And in 2 years, they adopted the new law. Some of the advocates were working for over 15 years on this new law. And it was getting held up. They were getting nowhere. They were getting blocked. And I'm not saying my story, was the deciding factor, but I'm just saying I only had to work on it for 2 years with them for us to finally get the new law passed. What really did it for our state is Pennsylvania. The Attorney General did an investigation on the Catholic Church, and it was a bombshell report. And it was just the numbers were so astronomical that our Attorney General then said, I'm going to open up an investigation, into abuse in the churches as well. And that sort of forced the hand of the senators that were holding it up. And, they adopted the new law. The ironic part is Pennsylvania still hasn't adopted the law. Their report forced the hand of Jersey, and yet they're still waiting for their law.
What was the reaction from the Senate committee when you gave your testimony?
You know what? They gave each person 5 minutes, and nobody could stay within the 5 minutes.
Of course.
And it was a draining all-day affair. This is everybody's like their one chance to get their story out in front of all these senators. And the senators would have to bang the gavel like, your 5 minutes is up, and people are crying and screaming, no, I'm not done yet. And I'm like, we are losing these senators. I said to this teacher I went down with who was also abused, her and I would drive together. And I'm like, we're losing people. I'm like, I'm going to cut my story down. And I just cut my story down to like a minute and a half. And I just gave him the gut punch of waking up in a suicide cell because I had murdered my abuser. And if you guys don't adopt the new law, you're going to have blood on your hands, and you're going to have a lot more Clarks running around who feel they have no recourse, and they're going to take law into their own hands, and it's going to be on all of you.
That's a good pitch.
Yeah. They voted 100% yay. And then it had to go to the full Assembly and Senate, and that was voted yes. And then it goes to the governor, and that was voted yes.
Wow.
And then we had it.
Wow.
So I worked on that for a couple of years, and then I stumbled into my first public speaking opportunity. I got released basically the 1st of 2017. I got released December 30th. So it was like the start of 2017. And I started going to Bible class at the county jail. And this one guy that came in, I really connected with him, and he wrote me when I was in prison. He's like, you got to come check out our church when you get out. It's a huge church. So I went to his church, and just I know we're going on for a while, but real quick, when I was in the county jail, like I could not pray. Like if I closed my eyes to pray, I would see Jesus naked on the cross, like with his penis, everything. Like, and I'd have to shake my head out. When I would go to pray, I would see sex images from pornography I looked at. When I would go to pray, I would see the murder. I would see his dead body on the floor. When I would go to pray, I'd be a 12-year-old boy screaming, I would just have to like shake my head. Like it was literally making me insane. Like I had polluted my mind I was so separated from God. I filled my mind for decades with rage, anger, violence, sex, drugs, alcohol, pornography. You name it. Nothing healthy, nothing good. It was all just crap going into my system. And so I signed up for Bible study, even though I couldn't pray. And I'm like, this is the last ditch effort here. And I was convinced that the guy teaching Bible study was going to be a right-wing fanatical, wagging your finger,
you're going to go to hell,
dude at me, right? Yeah. And I'm like, this guy's an asshole. I'm just going to tell the guards, get me out of here. Like, they'll take you out. And 2 elevators full of us go down to the floor. And I work myself to the back of the room. So I'm the last one. And I'm watching, and he's like shaking hands, and he's hugging guys and shaking hands. And he's got this, smile on his face. And I'm like, you phony baloney. And I go up there, and he hugs me. And I'm like stiff as a board. And he whispers in my ear, I've been praying for you, and my congregation has been praying for you. And I pull away from him. I go, do you know who I am? He goes, I know who you are. I read the papers. And I go, and you've been praying for me? He goes, yeah. I was like, wow, thanks, bro. He's like, yeah, you got it. And I was like, huh. And we went in there, and he later on said, I started off that meeting for you. And he went into the whole free will. He's like, a lot of you are here because people exerted free will in a negative way against you. He goes, we are not puppets on a string where God is saving the day for every calamity or every catastrophe. What would be the sense of life then if God's always going to step in? He goes, God gave us free will, and it can be used for good or for evil. And the person sitting next to you can decide to use theirs for good or evil, and you could be vulnerable, and they could use it for evil, and something bad could happen to you. It doesn't mean that God doesn't love you. It doesn't mean that God's not weeping over what's happening to you. It just means that God gave us all free will, and it's up to us to how we want to use it. And I was like, and that instantly took that dividing wall I had between me and God down. And I went up to my cell that night, and I instantly started praying. Like it was just removed. Like, boom, I could close my eyes and pray. I literally could not close my eyes without just seeing crap, like every time I tried to pray.
And how did it feel to be now praying and just to be free?
I was like, thank you, God. Like literally and like, I wish I could pray like I prayed in jail. Like It was so raw, and it was like in your face to God, and like, hey man, I'm in shit right now, bro. I need your help, man. I don't know how to go through another day. Like, help me, And I would literally have to pray for help to get through the next 30 seconds. Like praying for help to get through the next hour or the next day. That was like I need help just to get through the next 30 seconds and then the next 30 seconds. Because I just I was fighting suicidal thoughts. I was, my molestations on the front page of all the papers. I've always had drugs and alcohol to lean on when I felt uncomfortable. I got nothing now to lean on. The lawyer I picked, he said, I just want you to get this through your head right now, and we're not going to talk about it again. I go, what's that? He goes, you're not getting bailed out. He goes, I don't even want you to entertain that thought. He goes, 1, I don't trust your mental state. 2, you're an addict. I don't trust you getting out, that you wouldn't go back to drugs and alcohol. 3, you murdered someone. I don't think it looks healthy for you to go be seen in restaurants, in shopping centers, and bars without a care in the world. He goes, so I want you to just stay here. I want you to work on yourself, and every day you're in here will apply to whatever sentence you get. So just get comfortable in here. I was like, all right, man. So that's what I did. And I would tell all the young heroin addicts would come in, and they'd want to instantly get out, and they'd be, Mom, you got to get me out of here, man. There's a, I could hear them on there's murderers in here.
Me?
And I'd be like, they'd hang up, and I'd be like, dude, stop hassling your mother about getting out of here. Just settle in here, get weaned off the drugs, think about yourself, where your life's at. And, start working on yourself while you're in here. This isn't that bad for you. And they'd be like, all right, man. The next day, they'd be like, Mom, you got to get me out of here. Because the drugs are calling them, the pull of the drugs is so strong, So, so that was my start of my spiritual journey. That guy literally held my spirituality in his hand, Brother Bob. And had he done the wrong thing, said the wrong thing, had he not even explained free will to me, I don't know if I'd be where I'm at today. Faith is a big thing for me.
The story has so much, it's crazy that it's real life.
Yeah, we could sit here for 10 hours. That's why people got to get the book.
Yes.
Scarred.
But the duality is so interesting. You have this evil cop who abuses you, but then you have this great cop that gives you another chance at life and tells you to plead the fifth, and gets you a lawyer, and you have these, evil priests that, abuse people, like people in, your family and, different people in the world. And then you have these, good religious figures that, put you on a spiritual path.
Yeah.
And
yeah. There's a lot of duality there.
It's fascinating.
All throughout.
So,
yeah, we didn't even say like my father ended up dying in 1999, and on his deathbed, he confessed to me that he was molested by a Catholic priest. And I just got to believe that was his last-ditch effort trying to get me to open up to him. Like he had tried when I was younger. He saw my life was going absolutely nowhere. And I think him saying that was just his last chance before he died to like, I got to get my son to like get over this hump, man.
Now, if that confrontation with Dennis Pegg had gone differently and you actually just confronted him, like in the event that you could have gone back, what would you have said to him? What would you have wanted to know?
I have so many people that reach out to me that want to go confront their abuser, and I just say, no, don't do it. They're evil. They're master manipulators. They're liars. They don't want to heal. They don't want to get healthy. Whatever they're going to tell you is not going to be what you want to hear. They're not going to say, I'm sorry. They never say they're sorry. They can't. They just can't. They can't go there.
It's psychopathy. I mean, they're truly.
Yeah, they won't do it. And, when I was in prison, my therapist, she said to me, she goes, Clark, I just want you to be aware, the unit you're housed on, 1 out of 3, closer to 2 out of 3 guys are there for sex crimes. He goes, and she goes, mostly against children. I'm like, what? She goes, yeah. And I go, holy smokes. And I go, let me ask you something. What do you do for them while they're in here to help them before they get released? And she made no bones about it, that she was as liberal as the day was long. This woman was an angel. She was the sweetest lady. She would say, you can't be a therapist in a prison and not be a liberal person, And so I'm expecting, some feel-good answer from her. And she goes, we do absolutely nothing. And I go, what are you talking about? And she goes, Clark, they're liars and master manipulators, and they don't want help. And anything they say to us would just be a lie to try to get their sentence reduced. I'm like, really? She goes, yep. So I go, they just sit here doing their time to get out and reoffend. She goes, pretty much. She goes, if their case is that horrific, they can be civilly committed. Our laundry guy, nice dude on the tier, did our laundry, slip him a bag of coffee. He'll put some starch in it, have everything nice and folded for you. Laundry comes back great. He's telling us 2 months, I'm getting out. Next month, I get out. 2 weeks, I get out. 1 week, I get out. They come, they throw him up against the wall, they shackle him, and they take him away. And somebody goes to the, guard on duty. They're like, what the hell they take him away for? I'm like, you don't know what he's here for? I'm like, nah. Like, he did the most horrific thing to children, and he just got civilly committed. And we're like, no shit.
Good.
So,
wow.
Yeah, dude, it's, like people didn't go around with their paperwork. Everybody would lie to you, like what they're there for. Like if it ever came out, you didn't even, like I didn't even bother asking. Like, so my therapist told me about the 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3. She goes, I don't want people, it's called putting a battery pack on you. She goes, I don't want people knowing why you're here and putting a battery pack on you to go fuck guys up. And I'm like, and I said this to the prosecutor's psych who evaluated me before I took the plea deal. He said, how do I know you get released and you're not going to go harm anyone? And I said, I would only be harming someone who had molested me. And I go, and that person's gone. And so that's what I said to her. I'm like, they're not my battle. Like I'm not here to just go. If I got a life sentence for that would be a different thing.
Yeah.
Like, because then fuck it,
Yeah.
So I go, you don't have to worry about a battery pack being put on me.
Yeah. So I guess to conclude,
Yeah.
if you have young kids, be aware of who they're spending time with. Create an open, platform of communication where there's no secrets being held. They can come to you and that you're open and communicative.
Yeah, you can't take that dictator approach.
Yeah.
You gotta
if you see them rebelling or, using substances at a young age, it's possible that can be a cry for help. Be open, listen.
It's not normal at 12 years old to start doing drugs and drinking.
Right. So see that as an opportunity to speak to them and be open and listen.
Yeah. And like, all right, so, if you're a single mom and the next door neighbor is always offering, to help out with picking up Susie or Johnny, beware.
Mm-hmm.
If the coach, just thinks your kid is going to be a star and wants to take them under their wing and, mentor them, beware. If, the priest just, adores your child and thinks they're the cutest and, just I'll drive them home after Bible study practice. Like, nah. You literally can't trust anyone. There's not a troll living under the bridge who's going to snatch your child.
Mm-hmm.
There is a coach, there is a priest, there is a doctor, there is a teacher, there is a cop, there is the next door neighbor, there is the uncle, there is all of those who will.
Now, if someone's listening to this that's 20 years old and had sexual trauma, never told anyone, so just like yourself, what should they do?
Well, you gotta, I tell people, people will reach out to me and be like, "You're the first one I'm opening up to." You gotta find someone you trust. People will be like, "I don't trust anyone." Then I'll call me. Reach out to me. I answer all my stuff, man. There's nobody who's reached out to me who hasn't gotten answered. It may take a little time, but you gotta find that person. Like once you get it out the first time, then it's like, all right. My world didn't just fall apart, and just if you're going to talk to somebody, everybody thinks they got to be a fixer. Just the person you're going to talk to, just be like, hey, can we sit? I got something important I want to tell you. I don't need you to try to do anything about what I'm going to tell you other than listen. You just need someone to listen. Everybody gets uncomfortable. So if you're listening and you're going to be the one who's the listener, just listen. You don't have to be the healer. Just sit in the mud with the person while they give you their spiel. And if you're the person who was abused, find that person you trust, your best friend, someone. You can't bury this. Like you can bury it and buy yourself some time, but it's going to come out. It's going to come out in destructive ways.
Now, there's one person that we didn't talk about.
Yeah.
And it was this girl that you knew in college that was the love of your life that you weren't ready to have intimacy with. You weren't ready to settle down with.
Yeah.
So you pursued a different path.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to her?
Yeah. I mean, I walked away and she walked away and 30 years went by and she was like a little tickle in my skull. Like it wouldn't come out every week, every month, every year even. But she would flare up. And I'd be like, man, I wonder what Lisa's up to. I'd let Lisa get away, man, we had a lot of passion. We had a lot of love. Now I'm out of prison. I get this law passed. And I'm just like, I'm speaking, working long hours and just like, I either got to get a pit bull or I got to get a girlfriend. And I'm like, I'm at a stage where to be completely intimate with the next person, I got to put Lisa to bed. Like I can't really try to get into something where I still got this tickle from somebody from 30 years ago. So I'm going to reach out to Lisa and I'm going to apologize for failing her 30 years prior. And not being able to commit and not being able to be intimate. And I'm going to tell her why. And I found her on Facebook. I sent her a private message laying everything out, the murder, the drugs, the molestation, all of it. And just I needed you to know the full story, and it wasn't because I didn't love you. I did, and I'm sorry for how everything went down. And I like to say my thumb hovered over that send button, like, because I had this fantasy in my head, and hitting the send button and it doesn't go the way I want it to go, that fantasy just gets. So is it better to just keep the fantasy alive in my mind until the day I die, or to potentially have that fantasy get blown up and ruined? And I'm like, no, you got to hit the send button. So I hit the send button, and she responded, and I responded, and she responded. I responded, she responded, and I'm like, finally, after 2 weeks of texting, I said, I want to get a cup of coffee. She lived about an hour and a half away. And we met for coffee and realized we still loved each other. And that was 6 years ago, and we're still together, and we live together in Westchester, New York.
Sometimes it works out. I mean, truly a remarkable story. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing it with me. It's, every which way, redemptive, sad, unfair, and, ultimately, I think really profound in a lot of ways and poetic beyond, reality. It's truly crazy that this is not just a movie, that it's actually something that you lived through.
Yeah, man.
And, for better or for worse.
Yeah, like we're touching on stuff, in the book I go into more detail on a lot of stuff.
And when does the book come out?
July 29th.
Okay.
Yeah. Scarred. It's up on Amazon for pre-order. Head over and get it. And, I just think, like, so many books when I was locked up, were like light bulbs going off in me. And I just think this will be a light bulb, because I sunk to the point where I was held for murdering a lieutenant. I was put into the very jail where he worked for 25 years. Like, it doesn't get worse than that.
Yeah.
Like, how much lower do you want to sink? That's like, and just didn't see a way out of it. And yet I decided, I got to confront this demon finally. And here I am today,
Well, thank you so much for doing the show. I appreciate the insights, and I think the audience will be moved by the story, and maybe there's some people that we helped out today.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Let's do it again.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you, bro.
Appreciate it, man.
What's up, people? Quick announcement. If you are a fan of Camp Gagnon or Religion Camp, I have great news because we are dropping History Camp. That's right. This is the channel where we're going to be exploring the most interesting, fascinating, controversial topics from all time throughout all history. Right? You probably know about Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Nikola Tesla, interesting figures from history, and you probably learned about them in school and they were pretty boring, but not here. No. As you know, I was raised by a conspiracy theorist, so I'm going to be diving deep into all of the interesting, strange, occult, and secretive societal relationships that all of these famous, influential men from our shared past have. So if you're interested, please go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It will be pinned in the description as well as the comments. And if you're on Spotify, this doesn't really apply to you, but these episodes will be dropping as well. Just go ahead and give us a high rating because it really helps the show.